Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. It is 9:01. This is a regularly scheduled town council meeting. All council members are present, town manager, town clerk, town attorney. Will you please rise for the invocation, followed by the pledge of allegiance.
We meet today to focus on the very best that can happen for our lives. Show us what we need to do this day. Give us strength physically, mentally, and emotionally. Help us to successfully meet every aspect of our lives. We ask to be inspired with creative and dynamic ideas and trust we are guided so that we can meet our lives with joy and confidence. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
So moved.
Mayor, okay, if there's a second, then there can be some discussion. But there is one item, let me go ahead and mention it. Under your public hearings, this would have been your one quasi-judicial hearing today. This is for a special exception. There is a variance request that kind of is very related to that, and we want to marry the two items, so we're asking that that matter be continued to a date certain of February the 3rd, and the variance would be on the same agenda.
Okay. Do you want to keep it on here and then we have to open it, move it to?
Yes.
Okay. John, you want to amend your motion?
Move as amended.
All right, I will second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Public comment.
I have nobody signed up.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak during public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Local achievements and recognitions. Scott?
I've been down and out for the last week, so I'm gonna pass.
All right. Counselor Woodson?
Well, I think the best thing was the Putt and Pub, which was the women's club. They had sold-out crowd, 240 people on the teams. Haven't heard exactly what the final totals are for all the nonprofits, but I know just looking at Lover's Key that I worked all day, we had quite the crowd, so that was really fun. So great job once again to the women's club.
Vice Mayor?
On a more solemn note, I wanted to formally recognize the passing of Patrick McGowan. Pat served on the CELCAB committee, and he's also the author of The Mound House, the crown jewel of Fort Myers Beach. And I thought the best bio of him was actually on the back of the book. Patrick McGowan is a professor emeritus in the Management Information Systems Department of the Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia, of which he was the founding department head. He has degrees from the Georgia Institute of Technology, the University of North Carolina of Chapel Hill. He retired in 2003 to Fort Myers Beach, but still keeps a home in Athens, Georgia. He is the author and co-author of more than 30 textbooks in the fields of management science, computer science, and management information systems, and has published more than 50 academic articles. In retirement, he enjoys fishing, biking, reading. He serves on the board of directors for the Pelican Watch condominiums and works as a docent at the Mound House. He married his wife Carolyn for more than 53 years, and they have a son and daughter and two grandchildren. While he has written numerous textbooks, this is the first foray into into historical material, and I believe this book is on sale still at the Mound House gift shop. It's an excellent overview of the Mound House, and just wanted to thank Pat for his service, and just say that our prayers are with Carolyn and their family as they mourn their loss. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Counselor King?
I have nothing I could add. Thank you.
All right. Well, Counselor Woodson stole my thunder, but I can add to it a little bit. $65,000 was raised on Saturday.
All right.
34,000 of that will actually go to the 9 nonprofits on the island, and I believe there's 4,000 or 5,000 additional from the participating restaurants that will go to that. So it was a fun event. I still feel as though I got robbed. I was the ultimate John Daly, but it didn't work. So appreciate them putting that on every year. It's always a good event.
But nice mullet.
It was, and thank you to my wife for sharing the before and after picture. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Mayor, I have one thing.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to recognize our own Amy Baker. She had a birthday on Sunday, her 29th birthday. Happy birthday, Amy.
Hey,
Thank you.
29 and holding.
Yep.
Anything we can.
All right.
Absolutely.
Next, we have two presentations. One's from Jason Green, and the other is from Mr. Michael Poff. So, Jason?
Hey, good morning. How are you guys?
Long time no see.
Long time no see.
Welcome
Yeah,
back.
always in the background helping
Yes.
out where we can. Really excited to be here. We're making some progress on the impact fee study. I'm going to introduce Dwayne, who's part of our team. He's basically a national expert, and that's why we brought him. That's why we brought Dwayne on with this project, just to make sure that you get a good study and a good report moving us forward. And also future amendments, because unfortunately you got to update these things every so often according to state law. So I'm going to bring Dwayne up to go through some of this, and then we'll have some questions for you, and hopefully today get some decisions or get some thought provoking from you, and then we'll move forward with finalizing the report as we go. Part of the challenge is obviously with a smaller community, and obviously in a state of transition with your recovery, is the capital improvement program and projects that you're working on that are creating capacity. So I just want to set that tone for you before we get started. Is really, this is all about new capacity for new development, and you're kind of in a state of flux a little bit with some decision making on your comp plan and some other things. So we're trying to do the best we can to project some of that, and I think we're on the right track. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dwayne, and we'll go from there, and then I'll come back in a little bit.
Thanks, Jason.
Good morning, council members. Appreciate your input today, because you guys are the experts on your community. I can know about impact fees, but we have to work together because you're very unique. A lot of times impact fees in Florida were originally just designed for like greenfield development on the fringe. So if you added lane miles of parks lane miles of roads or acres of parks, it was easy just to keep adding those things incrementally over time. But that doesn't work for your community. You're an island, you're landlocked. You're unique in that you're redeveloping, intensifying, and recovering. And so all those things require some input. So what we thought we would do is kind of break our work session on impact fees into two main things, where we're going to today talk more about concepts and words and policy direction, and then we'll look at numbers next time. We don't want to dive right into the numbers, because there's kind of like packaging decisions and policy decisions that we want you to wrestle with today and give us some feedback. So that's kind of where we're at. Only have 8 slides, but we're going to go through these things. We're going to look at your current fees, how they're set up, and then talk about how we might want to do them differently. So that's more of the packaging idea of not only the types of fees, but the categories, and we'll look at those in just a minute. Then we'll get into more of the details of how impact fees are calculated and what would probably work best for you guys. So we'll look at that, then we'll talk about the difference on transportation versus mobility fees. The state has imposed some new language last year we'll look at and kind of make sure you guys are aware of that. And then we'll get into the ideas on improvements, and that's really where we need your input. You guys can voice concepts and ideas of, this is the kind of things we want to do, but then we need staff that really help us work out the details, the costs, what's realistic over time. So that's the last part. So let's go into the slides. Let's see how this works, if it does.
You can just tell them next slide. They'll
Next
do
slide, perfect. So it's kind of small, but your current fee schedule is shown on the left in that chart. The top tan kind of color, orangey color, whatever your eyes see, is your residential categories, and then at the bottom are the non-residential categories. So let me just kind of give you an idea of how the math is done, so you'll be aware of that. The ones on top, the residential ones, are more on a per unit or per room kind of basis. Hotel motel is per room. The ones at the bottom for non-residential are per 1,000 square feet. So if you're a retail or establishment, the first line there on non-residential, you don't just pay a flat fee of $5,000, $5,063 I think it is. You pay that per 1,000 square feet. So just to make the math easy for you, if you did a 100,000 square foot building, like would be a neighborhood Walmart or a good sized grocery store, you'd pay 100 times 5,000. So put 2 zeros on the end, it'd be $506,000 or $506,300. So the ones on non-residential multiply by go up by the size of your building. So be aware of that.
I wondered if, if I could just have you pause for a sec. Jason, could you come back up again? We're going granular very quickly. And I wondered if you could maybe kind of give us just an overview, because I think people are under the impression that we have no impact fees in Fort Myers Beach.
no,
Could
you do.
just could you give a little bit of background and sort of set the table before we get too granular so people know
Sure.
kind of how we're doing this?
Well, one of the biggest reasons to do this study, well, there's two reasons to do this study now. One is you have a very old impact fee study, and by law, you have to update it regularly. It's got to be based on new data, and that's what we're trying to provide. And staff and all that's been partnering on that. That's the main reason, one, to be legal and make sure we're doing that. Moving forward, I kind of hinted at that when I opened, is you're going to have to update them regularly. The state, I forget what the number is,
4
but
years now.
really every 4 or 5, used to be every 10, it's going to have to be a regular basis. And that's really, they really want to, I don't want to say put their thumb on local government, but if you're going to charge impact fees, it's got to make sure that they're very current, I guess I'll call it. By what I've been able to do the research is a lot of the impact fees, this is how old they are. They came into the code when you adopted your code from the Lee County impact fees. So that makes them very, very old. So we've had them in these categories. They're sort of explained in the ordinance. For example, the transportation impact fee really is kind of ahead of its time. It talks about mobility. It talks about transit. It talks about being able to spend money on that. We've mostly spent money on sidewalks, making connections, pedestrian connections as development occurred. Margaritaville and the whole area around there was at 3rd Avenue and all that kind of stuff. All those sidewalk projects got done with impact fee to connect people to places. So that was a really important result of that. So yeah, this is basically whether the money goes up or down, whatever the rates get charged will be based on what our projected growth, capital needs are, capital projects needed for that growth. And new growth only can pay for a proportionate share of that infrastructure. Operation and maintenance, we'll get into that, but that you can't pay for that with impact fees.
But
So-
it sounds like what you're saying, I want to put words in your mouth, but
Sure.
it sounds like we have been charging impact
Absolutely.
fees, that just the amount of those fees is out of date. Is that fair?
We need to update that to be consistent with what are your town's
Needs
capital
are.
projects, what are your needs to to put in projects related to growth, not things that are satisfying and fulfilling existing development. So it's a fine line there to make sure that we're paying for new growth and doing projects. Now you can have a percentage of a project is based on new growth, and the other percentage of that comes from revenue that you have through other sources and grants and other things to serve the current public. But you've got to make sure that you're only paying for the new growth percentage out
And
of
that
that.
concept of the impact fees being utilized for that new growth, that's statutorial. That's what we're
Mm-hmm. Correct.
trying to satisfy the statute by maintaining that principle.
Correct. Right.
That's great.
And so, for an example, when you rebuild a commercial development or a house, like we've had a lot of homes that were lost, and then when they rebuild, they don't pay right now for an impact fee. What we will get into is some ways to look at bigger and more impactful development of the same. A single family is not always just a single family. If you go from a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom cottage to a 7-bedroom, 5,000 square foot house, that has a different impact. So we'll get into that today, talking about a little bit of that, of do you want to go down that road of looking at that. But for right now, if you build a house, you don't pay, that had a house there in the last, I think it's 10 years, basically. After you tear down, you get 7 years, I think, you basically don't pay an impact fee.
That's really helpful. That
Yep. And the
provides
same for commercial, too.
Yeah, very helpful foundation for your comments. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's a helpful.
There's a whole process that the building department does. You don't pay the impact fee till the building permit side of it, and so that's why I know there's a want for this to get done very quickly because of new development that's coming and all that. But the reality is they're quite far away from getting a building permit. Any of the new projects you've already approved, they're a couple years probably from getting a building permit. So we've got some time to do this right. You make your decisions of how you want to do it, and then we can implement it. And there's plenty of time to do that.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you. Yep.
That's fine. And now I got to look at the slides in the background. I was thinking, next time I'll know to make everything bigger so you can see it better. You have small screens. I wasn't aware of that. So good segue to, let's talk about the column on the left, the categories, and what the kind of best practices are nowadays. You kind of just read the words, single family, multifamily, those are types. And it kind of gets confusing because you can look at a building for a multifamily building and you don't really know whether it's a condo or a timeshare or just a regular, apartment building. So there's kind of a mixture of looking at the building, what type of building is it, and ownership with your current categories. And it gets kind of complicated because what if somebody wanted to convert a building to some other form of of ownership pattern, or, you know, go to a hotel, or the other way around, go from a hotel to being, you know, a timeshare or a condo. That greatly it complicates things for impact fees. So what we've kind of gone to, the best practices, we're going more and more to doing residential by size. And so we get rid of any concerns about unit size, average unit size. So we don't get rid of any concerns about type or actual ownership pattern. So we aren't really caring whether it's a condo or just a regular apartment building. And then that gets into what Jason was just saying. If you do them by size, there's a big difference in impact between what might have been there originally, like a three bedroom or 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bath, versus they take that down and put up a big, large 2-story party house with 5 bedrooms or 6 bedrooms and that many bathrooms. There's a lot of big difference on the impact of those kind of things. So realizing that happens quite a bit in beach communities, it'll help us to kind of address some of that impact. It's still one unit, but the unit that there is 4 or 5 times what used to be there, and it has a lot more impact. It uses not so much, we aren't concerned about water, but it, you know, you have more people, you have more demand for use of the beaches, getting to and from restaurants, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what, if we go to a size threshold, our size ranges, then we can accommodate that. So the simple way to do it would just be a little like large, medium, and small kind of relationships. We'd have to express those in terms of square foot sizes, so that it'd be easy for the building permit people to see what category you fall into. But that's kind of the way to do it. And I'll show you some examples in a minute and let you kind of discuss whether you think you're comfortable with that concept or not. And then on the non-residential, we kind of have gone to fewer and more general categories. Again, when fees were originally done, you know, I've been doing them for more than 30 years. We had the ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineering, trip generation rates were done by these categories, and that's where a lot of these terms came from, like bank, car wash, convenience store with gas pumps. All those are terms right out of the ITE kind of manuals. We've kind of gotten away from that. We're realizing that it's easier to implement broader, more general categories, and then you don't have to worry so much about change of use. So like now you'd have to worry about if somebody wanted to go from a general office to a medical office, well, you'd have to charge them more to become a medical office. And you don't have to do that. You can do that, but doesn't mean that you have to. So it's better to be generally right than precisely wrong. And so we want to have general categories that make sense and don't make it hard for us to administer.
Might have to steal that from you.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a quote from a guy that wrote a book about parking. Is a UCLA professor. He's the one that usually uses that. So let's talk about the column headings across the top. Now you have a transportation fee. We're probably going to go to a mobility fee. I have a slide on that in just a minute. We'll look at that. And now you have a separate column for regional parks versus community parks. There's really no need for that. I'm not sure why exactly we have that. And we might want to call it Parks and Recreation or Parks and Trails, whatever fits better, just to make sure that we're catching all the types of improvements that we want to have in the community. But whatever the label is that we come up with, it won't have to have 2 pots of money. Because now Joe has to keep those separately and spend them separately, and it makes it harder to, is this park a regional park or a community park? We don't have to worry about that. We'll get rid of that. And then let's talk about municipal facilities, because people have suggested, well, maybe we should add that as a third type of impact fee. And that could be kind of a catch-all. It might include a more permanent town hall than what you're in right now. It might include your share of public safety kind of improvements, like you might have to help pay for a sheriff substation or maybe EMS beach patrol kind of things. All that could go into that municipal facilities. Now, the reason I have a question mark there is because the state kind of did a zinger recently. Florida's a home rule state, so we've had impact fees for a long time, even before we had the Florida Impact Fee Act, which is our enabling legislation. But every year they add more and more to it and kind of make more specific kind of requirements, or some people say they put more restrictions on local governments. And one of the things that happened along the way is they changed the definition of public facilities. It used to have an open-ended clause, you know, it used to say this, that, and other things, including but not limited to, and then you could do whatever you want. Well, they specifically took that out, and they got very specific on the listing of the type of facilities that can be included. Public safety is fine. I need now the attorney, not today, but at some point to chime in on this, because there's not a good agreement on what, how that's gonna shake out. General government isn't listed as one of the things that they've itemized. And so libraries is not there, general government's not there. So some communities are being conservative and saying, we're not gonna do those because we don't wanna be sued. Other communities that are saying, we've been doing them forever, we're gonna keep doing them like that until we get sued and the courts tell us we can't. So we have to decide your attorney's comfort level, where you're at and how you wanna be on that. I'm not an attorney, Jason and I are just humble planners, so we can't really give you much guidance on that. But that is kind of a specific, you know, how does that shake out, and can you do town hall? The public facility, the public safety ones are fine, we can do those. It's just the town hall that I want to get some input on. So, you know, if you have thoughts on that, I know we probably want to build a permanent structure, and, you know, there's a growth share.
We're hopefully moving into one soon, so
Okay.
hopefully there's no need to have to build another one ever again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so there's timing, and depending on how you pay for it, like if you did bonds, then you could pay for, you could have the new development help pay for their share of the capital costs, you know, that kind of thing. So we could recapture or do cost recovery for the gross share of that, because you're not just sizing it for the community the day that you open the doors. You want to size it for, you know, 10 or 20 years in the future, or the ultimate kind of build out of the community. So there is a difference in the increment between what will be here when the doors open versus what will be at the kind of design of the building. And so that increment, we could allocate to growth and have that be an impact fee item. So that, you don't have to do it. You could say, let's just pay for it through general taxes, through grants, or other revenues. And you don't have to pay for it from impact fees, but you could, maybe, if the attorney says she's comfortable with that. Okay, any questions on this slide? Don't understand it, don't understand the concepts that I'm suggesting of by size or by general categories?
Under municipal facilities, can that also include water towers, water pumps, infrastructure type stuff like that, or is that under the mobility part of it?
No, those are all under water sewer, and I'm not sure the language that you use here. Some places call them capacity charges, some places call them impact fees. But there are water sewer fees for that initial extra capacity, and those might be under the county, right? I'm not sure how it's done.
Yeah, I think you just agreed. Yeah, you already charged. I think you charge, or in the county, whoever charges for those facilities through your rates.
But
And
that
through
only
your-
covers the county-owned part of the stormwater, right? It doesn't include side streets. but
Right.
we're-
I haven't looked at your utility study and what your rates are. I would assume there's some capture in your rates that pay for infrastructure replacement and that sort of thing. As far as new stuff, I would think there's an impact fee per connection, but I'm not sure. I can't answer that. We can look at that, but yeah, but that's not as part of this, because that's usually covered under a separate ordinance and separate impact fee.
That's what I was getting at.
Yep.
Can there be a separate impact fee specifically for future growth of stormwater?
Yeah, hopefully your stormwater and your utilities have taken that into account. Now, whether they're updated based on what you want to do, if it's different from what the old plan was versus, you know what I'm saying? You're kind of in this comp plan transition, so it makes it a little bit difficult to judge that. I assume that those studies have evaluated the growth of the community and transition to whether it's more residential, more commercial, that kind of thing. So that may be something we got to go back, or you guys got to go back and look at with your departments and say, have we looked at this, and when's the last time we updated those? They're generally not included in this part of it. They're usually separate processes and adopted separately. Yeah, they're all called impact fees, but they're
Not for the
different
specific-
categories. Right. Usually we end up dealing with transportation/mobility, parks and rec type things. And the reason why I stepped up here also is because on our current chart in the code, you have fire and schools. But those are also, they're adopted as part of your code, but then deferred to those organizations. So those are separate bodies so I wouldn't even include those. We have to add them and process them, and through basically public information, notify people, make sure they know that those are due. But you get dictated what those are. Those bodies adopt those and let us know what they are, and then we collect them on their behalf and then pass them through. So it doesn't make any sense anymore to have them in a table, basically. But we'll still collect them and
Well, I
pass them
can see
through.
how it would be beneficial to have them in the table. If
Well, they
someone's
change all
coming
the
in.
time. That's part of the issue. But they
But I
always
think
change,
just
yeah.
the fact that not everyone understands that Fort Myers Beach Fire District is different than, especially
Yes.
new people that are coming in to buy.
Correct.
They don't always understand there's different entities involved. And having that visibility there, I don't think hurts anything. I know it probably makes it a little
Right.
bit more work, but
Yeah, it's just because the way they did it a couple years ago is I think both entities adopted a new impact fee for several years out, and it had a growth percentage in it. So, for example, they adopted a certain rate in 2019 or whatever it was, and it was going to grow a certain percentage each year or every other year. A lot of communities go with a 50%, 75%, 100% is what they call it. So they'll do the study that says your 100% impact fee should be, but they don't adopt it as or implement it at that time. They'll say, well, I know Charlotte County is doing this and other communities do this. We'll do it at 50%. We'll go to 75% in 2 years. We'll go to the 100% in 4 years, kind of over time implement that 100%. And then they actually never do. But you're admitting you're going to collect less impact fee than what you need, but that's a whole separate conversation. So yeah, that's the only challenge with that is they grow in percentage by ordinance and they update those regularly. But we've been doing that internally. Your building department's been doing that at that point when they collect them anyway. So they update those tables. They show people what they are. We do a spreadsheet. We show the applicant what it costs. They get to review it, review our math, and then they
well,
pay
maybe
it.
it would make sense to not be so granular then as to what the dollar amount is.
Sure.
Just that it's subject to.
Right. Well, and the challenge also is just, Dwayne touched on is the categories. Our categories are different than the school board's categories that are different than the fire district's categories. So trying to at least come a little bit more in line with those for the public's sake so they can kind of see some kind of similarities among those rather than just industrial versus, I think we have like 12 categories of industrial, right? And so it gets a little trickier to categorize things. But we want to be a little bit more consistent with those around us too. That's also part of this.
Can you, Jason, to the mayor's point about sewer and stormwater, can you at least have a conversation with Joe and just get comfortable that we're sort of where we need to be?
Yeah,
in
from
a
my
general
experience
sense?
here, I think I've watched and heard you guys doing those things, and I know the stormwater has been a big conversation. I haven't particularly dove into those studies personally, but we'd be happy to have those
I
conversations.
just think
Just from,
that it's a good time to have that conversation
Sure.
since we're looking at the aggregate impact fees for Fort Myers Beach. I also would just ask, again, very optimistic about our school's future and have every reason to be optimistic, but if God forbid we were to have to, we lose funding for our elementary school, is this a tool we could utilize if we took over the school or became a charter school?
So we touched on, you pay an impact, you get charged. Everybody that develops here gets charged an impact fee for schools based on what the school board adopted. And that goes somewhere else, essentially right now, right? So I think that's a conversation you probably need to have with the school board is how does that work and what does that look like in the future, whether it's expansion, replacement, all that. That is definitely something that we would encourage you to do. We can help you through that, but because you don't charge it, you just collect it. It's a conversation you have to have.
Totally understand now, it makes perfect sense, but, God forbid if something were to take a turn for the worse and
Right.
we had to take over the school or participate in a charter school.
Right.
I'd just be curious to know what our rights are and our opportunities are under this dynamic.
Well, and we were talking about, I don't know that school board impact fee study, if the school goes away, as in a worst case scenario, we're still mandated to charge the same amount of whatever they've adopted.
Well, the school
So then
would-
there's a whole conversation of what's your actual, do they
Yeah.
study your island and say, this is what our impact is, and this is what our growth
The hope-
is?
Yeah, the hope is the school would not go away and that it would become a
Correct.
charter school or we
Absolutely.
take some responsibility
Right.
for the school and, yeah, okay.
But the point to get to is, does their study really take into account what your impact is?
Fair point.
Or are we overcharging development because it's a countywide analysis?
Give that some
Right.
thought as you proceed, yeah,
Okay.
it's a good question, yeah.
Right, and maybe you could lower some fees on that side, at least for people that develop here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So let me show you some ideas on the converting to size ranges and how we might do that. The first box at the top where I said not recommended, it's not so much that we don't want to recommend the size ranges, it's just the three large categories is what I was kind of getting at. But we did get local data from your building folks on actual construction of residential units. It's primarily detached residential units. This is not multifamily. Constructed of calendar years 2020 through 2024. And so you have unusual kind of range distribution. You have very large units that if you go, onto the mainland into Fort Myers, it's going to be very different. And so we kind of have to set up things and make sure that we do things according to your size ranges that are appropriate for the island. So right now, if you can see the numbers, it's very small, I know. You had roughly, I think it's 190 units over those 4 years, or 5 years actually, inclusive of 2000 through 2020 through 2024. So that would be an annual average of 38 units, detached units per year. And so if we just broke those into roughly 3 general categories or equal size or each equal number, then the upper end ones are very, very large. You see the ranges, I wish you could see the ranges. They go up to 16,000 square feet for very large units here on the island. Then you have the medium range is only up from about 2,300 up to 3,600. And then the low end, you start at roughly 1,000 square feet and go up to roughly 2,300. So those are all the way that the distributions would break out. And when we have very large units, just like when we do income, we have very large numbers that kind of skew the averages. So we tend to use medians, the one in the middle, as the kind of the way that we would do the size thresholds. So yours would go from roughly 2,800 square feet at the low end up to 5,700 square feet at the upper end, and that's kind of how we would structure the impact fees. The trouble when you have 3 large categories, though, is if you add 1 more square feet, you get a big jump in the fee. So people don't like that. And so what we generally like to do is go to more categories. Kind of the other extreme would be more like shown at the bottom, where we have 500 square foot increments. We might not need to go to that level of detail. We might just do it in 1,000 square foot increments. So, for instance, you might have a fee schedule that says if you do 1,000 square feet or less, that you pay one number. If you do it in the thousands, 1,001 to 1,099, then you would do the second range, and then you go up. But all of those would still be capped, because what happens is you don't have a linear relationship. It's not a straight line. So if you double the size of the house, it doesn't double the number of people there. It doesn't double the number of trips. It's a log curve. So a log curve is one that kind of like I showed in the illustration there. It tapers off or flattens out over time. So it kind of goes up steep, and then as you go, it increases, but it increases at an ever decreasing rate. So it flattens out over time. So after you get past a certain point, if you build there's not a big difference in number of people in a 10,000 square foot house versus a 6,000 square foot house. So that's kind of the way we structure the fees. We have some kind of cap, and after that point, we don't continue to charge. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Are you not liking that idea? What are your thoughts?
Just to be clear, we're not charging dwelling units here on Fort Myers Beach presently?
You are charging, but it's by type. So if you're a single-family detached house, you pay the same amount whether you're 2,000 square feet or 16,000 square feet.
And that's if you only build a brand-new house? If you're raising your house, you don't pay that, or how does that work?
Correct. If there's something there is a time window that Jason said that's in the ordinance. It had to be there within a certain amount of time, like 5 to 10 years, I'm not sure what it is. But if you had a house there within that time period, then you don't have to pay an impact fee to replace it.
Okay.
If we went to this system, you would have to pay for the additional size. So you get credit for what was there, but then you would pay for the extra.
Okay, thank you.
And we can build in a size, some kind of a de minimis concept, so that, for instance, if somebody wanted just to add on 1 room or close in a porch and make it climate-controlled space, you probably don't want to hit them up as an impact fee for that. So a lot of communities will add a threshold. You could increase it by 10% or 20% or 30%, something like that, without having to pay the extra amount. But if you're going to double it, or, more, then you're gonna pay the impact fee for that. So we can build that into, that's kind of the details on the implementation, but, it clearly is an additional impact if you're gonna build something back that's 2 or 3 times what was there originally.
My 2 cents is I've always been a fan of a sliding scale when it comes to whether it's impact fees or variances. I mean, a person building 1,000 square foot house is not gonna have the same impact as someone who's building a 5,000 square foot impact. And to charge them the same, or a fence, if I'm building a fence and I need a variance for that fence, why should I have to pay the same amount as a commercial building that has to ask for 3-foot side variance or something, So I'm in favor of the sliding scale, and I'm even okay with the 500 square feet versus the 1,000, but that's my 2 cents. John, how do you feel about it?
I agree with what you said. I guess I would still need to think about the square footage, I guess, for me.
Jim?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the concept. I'd be interested in the actual numbers in terms of what we're charging.
Of course.
Yeah, and so don't forget that, yes, so there's that component of it, but there's also it's the methodology by which we measure. The amount that we charge is going to be directly relation to what projects are required to meet that growth, right? So I get your point, but it's also hard to say, well, just because the 500 versus 1,000 increment isn't going to equal a certain dollar amount. That dollar amount is going to be dictated ultimately by what projects are needed.
And Jason,
That's the challenge.
Is that, and I appreciate that. Is that aspirational bucket of projects that need to be done? Is that the bucket then that we use for the formula to determine how much we charge?
Yes.
So
So,
we'll have a
that's why
list-
the methodology conversations today is not tied to the actual dollar
So
amount.
we'll need to really have a specific strategic plan as to what our aspirational goals are in order to develop the formula, which then will develop the individual impact fee for these projects.
Yeah, I think the challenge there is, right, so a lot of times you'll think of the methodology, you'll agree, let's say you agree to this concept, and then you get the dollar amount back and you're concerned about the dollar amount. There's other ways to, I guess, mitigate that dollar amount, and Dwayne can get into that. And I think I mentioned it before, whether it's the 50%, 75% amount, rather than going back and changing the methodology by which you applied it. Does that make sense?
Do-
So,
Do we have such an aspirational goal, Mr. Town Manager? I mean, do we have a list of projects at this point, or would that have to be developed?
We do, but you've also approved a strategic plan, which is underway now. So we'll be going to the public and getting more input so we can tie all that to this.
So that will, the strategic plan that we're hoping to accomplish will be then obviously tied to this impact fee
Correct.
concept.
So what we did is you had that R2P2 report that was done that identified several projects, including a lot of transportation projects. We've taken those, and then we've gone and added a few of our own that just based on experience and knowledge that we've started identifying other sidewalk projects. As an example, there's some future transit stops, and they're talk about the ferry, right, and all those things, but are they connected to other things? So we went through basically the whole town and identified places where we need to connect things, identified those sidewalks, and are kind of compiling that into a master list. That doesn't mean they all have to be done in 5 to 10 years. Then the other conversation that we were having internally is just what you're talking about is, do we wait for all that to finish this? And I think the answer is no, especially with the state saying every 4 years. Might as well do this, finish it, and then we get new data to update it in 4 years anyway. And then that's, once you're on that process and get in that habit, then it's going to be much easier. So we don't have to wait for that better data. We just have to make as good of data as we can based on the projects that we think you need. And so we've done that also separately, has gone through and just identified some things that you'll get to see that list. And if you say, oh, that's crazy, then we can take that off. But the R2P2 is a big foundation for that.
At some point, you're going to have to do a cost-benefit analysis of if our bucket of aspirational projects to build as a result of this additional growth and size and so forth and impact, if our aspirational goals are so large, it could create an impact fee that may not be market rate, right? It could maybe be out of
Correct.
sync with other communities and could cause a sort of unintended consequence, if you will, as we try to rebuild our island. How do you figure that out?
I mean, I think maybe Dwayne can talk about that, but that's the mitigation of the percentage you charge ultimately. Most communities are so far behind in infrastructure to begin with that it's that rate can get out of control. I know what you're talking about. So we can talk about that, how to mitigate that, but I think it's through ultimate what you adopt as far as what you want, who you want to charge, how you want to charge. There's ways to mitigate and charge or not charge for things that you want. as an example. So we can get into that too, but there may be certain things that you want on this island, so why charge them a big impact fee?
Because
Right.
I'm under the impression right now we're behind other communities in the county in terms of what we're charging for impact fees. And I'm all for catching up, but I don't want to get so far ahead of them that we become non-competitive, you know what I mean? So-
Yeah, but ultimately our goal is to make you legally sound, right?
Yep,
That's
I
step
got you.
one. And is it justifiable? And then the other challenge that honestly, the other challenge the town has had is not just collecting the fees. You've collected them for 20 plus years, but spending the money. You also have a cap on how long you can spend that money. So if you don't have a good capital program in design, engineering, construction, and building those facilities, it doesn't matter. So you have to give that money back after 10 years if you don't use it. You don't want to do that. Tracking that person down, giving it back. I've done that before. I've done that at other communities, and it's a nightmare. And you don't want to do it. You get into a situation where I got a loan, the builder built it, they pay the impact fee as part of my loan kind of whole process, and then something didn't get spent, and then I got to give it back. Who do I give it back to? The homeowner doesn't get it. Now I've sold the house twice. Does the builder get it? They went bankrupt. There's all kinds of things that can happen. You don't want to do that. You want to spend the money and build the projects that your community needs. And honestly, this community's had a little bit of challenge with that, and luckily, you've done it the last couple of years. I think going back to 2017 really started that program. But before that, there was money building up, and you weren't identifying projects. So,
Gotcha.
so this goes into this is going to spill into. I don't want to get too far off base here, but you're going to spill into. You have a bike ped plan that's past due and outdated, and you've done some of the projects. Updating those on a regular basis. Those can feed in, some stuff like that can feed into the impact fee update. So, at some point, you want a community to get on this kind of this flow where you're updating those studies. They're feeding you ideas and projects. It's a natural progress into the impact fee study. Then you adopt and implement that, and then you have this cycle every 4 or 5 years where you're doing all of those. And it's a lot of work, but if you can do them in the right order and get them on the right schedule, it makes life a heck of a lot easier. You don't have to brainstorm every 5 years and try to come up with new stuff. You're doing it on a constant basis.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yes.
So wait, before you go, I have a question. So these are options for dwelling units. Do you separate, or can you separate, like household versus commercial? So
Yes.
so you could have a 500 square foot scale on household,
Right.
but 1,000 square foot scale on, say, condos or commercial or hotel or something
Well,
like that?
let Dwayne talk about the commercial, but I think the whole point with what we're talking about on the residential, and here especially you have that challenge of, is it a condo? Is it a hotel, motel, condo facility? We've got this mix of ownership that gets really confusing and very difficult on our staff side and implementation side to figure that out. And some of these things change over years. Just thinking of the different variety of types of uses you have at Pink Shell or some of these other places. And so it gets really hard for us to have to make day-to-day decisions of what is that? And are we charging them fair to what somebody got charged 3 or 4 years ago? So I think,
Jason, don't we have in our code, is it a duplex or a triplex? Then permitting wise, it then becomes a commercial project versus a residential.
Florida Building Code has those defined differently as far as which code they go under. Yes, and once you become, I believe it's a triplex
Or
or
more,
by the impact fee ordinance, once you're over that, then you're multifamily. What we're saying is, what's the difference in a 2,000 square foot condo and a multiple unit building versus a 2,000 square foot single family home? Do you want, or a motel, condo, ownership, timeshare, right? There's so much variety that people are being creative with and how they do those. I don't want to get mixed in with density and all that kind of conversation, but and I think that's part of what you're talking about. But the type of use of the unit, it's being used essentially for a family, essentially. Should we charge this rate? Because it's residential, right? It's residential. Commercial has a whole different approach to it, and typically, I think it's per 1,000. But Dwayne can probably answer that. That's mostly what I've seen across the state is the per 1,000 and fraction thereof for non-residential. Yeah, there's some lines blurred there because multifamily is technically a commercial building code thing, but it's not a commercial impact fee or commercial use. It's a residential zoning district. Yeah, right. Yeah, your heads are going to spin. There's all this.
Well, but isn't that, can you delineate it between, if someone has a residential home that say is a duplex or a triplex, but
Right.
is using it as a commercial entity, whether it be renting it out, they don't actually, it's not their home, can that be a way to delineate between?
We'd rather keep it for impact fees as simple as possible, so we wouldn't care about any of that. We would
Okay.
just look at the size of the units itself. Yeah, and that's a lot easier to administer. So what we're talking about here is how to package the residential fees. The non-residential ones will be done per 1,000 square foot, but it'll be the
Okay.
same rate. So whether you pay for a 100,000 square foot building or a 10,000 square foot, you pay the same rate per 1,000 square feet. It's just you get multiplied by the size of your building. So that's how it works on non-residential. So we're talking about size ranges for the residential and how to
Okay.
package it. And so we'll probably either do the 500 square foot increment for the first draft or 1,000 square foot increments. But I think that's probably the better way to go than just the three large categories aren't going to work for you because you have such a diversity between upper and lower end that it's going to not be a good system for you guys. So we probably will need more increments, either 500 or 1,000 square feet probably work best.
Well, then if we're strictly talking residential, then I would rather see, like you, Dan, the 500
Yeah.
square feet increments as opposed to the 1,000.
Okay.
That's my
Yeah,
opinion.
and then you have less, it doesn't really matter because it's just people looking it up on a table, it's easy to do. And we usually will provide an impact fee calculator too, where people can just type in like a spreadsheet where you fill in things and it automatically shows what the fees are for staff, or you can publish them online. Jason over there helped develop that kind of thing for Sarasota when he worked there. And it works out really nice. People can just put in the size of the unit and, then they can know what their fees are and before they show up in the building. Because the developers for performers and that kind of stuff, they want to know what the numbers are going to be before they show up at the counter. They got to know up front, so. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Maybe. Oh, there we go. So here's the general kinds of ways we crunch the numbers, the recommended impact fee methods. We can do a cost recovery like we were talking about for town hall if you went ahead and built it, as long as you have some use for the money. With impact fees, they're always concerned about need and benefit. Those are the two tests that we have, the dual rational nexus test. So we got to make sure that somebody's benefiting. So if you're paying an impact fee, then that money has to have a purpose, some reason it's going to be used. It's not to generate revenue. It's not a tax. You got to keep that in your head. It's not a newcomer tax. A lot of people want to say it's a newcomer tax. It's not. It's a fee to build infrastructure. So we could do a cost recovery, but that probably for the transportation and parks, those kind of things, it just doesn't make sense. It does make sense for water and sewer because those kind of things are closed systems. You have to have the capacity before you can approve new development. So cost recovery is often done on water sewer because you have to build the capacity ahead of time. But not for the ones that we're going to be doing for transportation and parks. Incremental expansion we might use if we're going to have a vehicle and equipment component because it does make sense that if we grow a little bit, it's easy to add another bulldozer or some kind of it has to have a useful life of more than 5 years. You don't want to, we're not doing weed whackers and that kind of stuff, but we can do vehicles and equipment, and we can do those incrementally if we want to add that to a municipal facilities fee. The one we're going to use the most, though, is the plan-based method, where we're going to, because of your uniqueness of your community, you're going to identify these are the things we want to do and how we're going to pay for them. And the trouble is, a lot of those are going to be things that are going to benefit existing development as well as new development. So we're going to have to use average cost kind of allocation, not so much marginal cost, which is how we do the water sewer fees. They're much easier to do on a marginal cost basis. So the problem we're going to have to, the sword you're going to have to be aware of is that there's usually going to be a big chunk of those capital costs that's going to have to be funded by some other revenue source. Very few of those are going to be purely growth related. So if you add more beach access, or if you add more linear feet of multi-use paths or that kind of thing, everybody's going to use those things. It's going to benefit existing development as much as new development. So we might pay for, depends on the amount of development that we anticipate, we could easily pay for, 10, 15, 20% of those things through the impact fees. But the other chunk has got to come from some other revenue. And so that's the thing that we always have to be aware of. When we do our list of projects, that's why you might prioritize them and say, we're only going to do these, and at some point we're going to cut it off because we don't have the money for all the other revenues. So that's probably going to be the problem. as well as the, you know, the magnitude of the fees. You can eliminate projects for either one of those reasons. And that's why we're gonna have to, you know, get finance to chime in on those things and say, you know, what can we afford, you know, from grants or from, you know, some other revenue sources, sales tax, property tax, those kind of things. But there's usually gonna be some other revenues required for any project that we do with impact fees. Very limited on the ones that are gonna be purely growth related for transportation and for parks. So those things are gonna benefit everybody. So the last one on the right there is about credits. There's really two types of credits. I want you guys kind of learn the language and get used to these things. So there might be a revenue credit that we put into the methodology and just lower the fee amounts. So some communities, like if you're very dependent on sales tax and you're very concerned about shooting yourself in the foot and not want to charging retail too much, some communities will put in a sales tax credit for retail just to keep down those fees. We might do something like that if you are so inclined. So that's kind of a policy directive. We'll see how the numbers work out, and we'll decide, you know, kind of where we want to go with that. But then the other type of credit is something that's going to be in development agreements. So if a project has to do, as a condition of their approval, some kind of thing that you want done anyway. You have this CIP plan, so part of it might be improving the road right in front of their place, like on Estero, and you would just say, well, all right, go ahead and build those, and then you don't have to pay you're not going to pay twice. You're not going to pay the impact fee and have to build it. So we'll give you a credit for that, and call that a site-specific credit. And that's something that's written into every development agreement, or it's clear that you're not going to pay twice, and that's a requirement in the Florida impact fees. So be aware of that, you know, we'll do the methodology, but sometimes, a lot of times, the developers would rather go ahead and build it because then their frontage is all done, everything's, you know, nice and neat. They don't have to wait for the city to come back 10 years later and tear things up again and put in a wider multi-use path. They'd rather just go ahead and do it up front. And if that's the case, fine, we'll give you a credit for that, for the actual cost. And that's called a site-specific credit. So that's not into the impact fee methodology. That's something that's done at the implementation side of things. Okay? Any question on those? All right, let's go on to the next slide. So now let's get into the difference between transportation and mobility. You have now a transportation fee, and we're primarily focused on moving vehicles, the old school kind of way of doing it. And we allocated, initially, we're just done on trips, and then it got to be more of on pass-by trips were added into it, and then we added a distance component, so it got to be vehicle miles of travel. That's kind of how the current fee is set up. Your community will probably want to go to the mobility fee, which is more focused on moving people, and we're going to do the cost allocations a little differently. It's more concerned about person trips, our functional population, which is another way kind of thinking about how much time people spend at different things and kind of adjusting it for those kind of uses. But the mobility fee has gotten refined, or again, a definitional thing that was put into the Florida statutes this last year. So in 2024, and the laws of Florida, that's just a screenshot of those changes. And I'll just read those to you because it does sound like what we want to do here in Fort Myers Beach. A mobility fee means a local government fee schedule established by ordinance and based on projects included in the local government's adopted mobility plan. So they're trying to get you to come up with an actual plan. This is what we want to do. This is how we're going to spend the money. And again, that addresses the whole need and benefit. Why do we need to do this, and who's going to benefit, that kind of thing. And then the definition of mobility plan, it means an alternative transportation system. Mobility study developed by using a plan-based methodology, which is what we're recommending, adopted into a local government's comprehensive plan that promotes compact, mixed-use, and interconnected development served by multimodal transportation system in an area that is urban in character or designated to become or to be urban in character as defined by another section. So that sounds like what we kind of want to do here. We're a fixed, geographic area, we're urban, we're not getting any more land area, we just have to do the best we can with what we have. And so our recommendation is to go the mobility fee.
Just a quick question, if I could, and this is a little presumptuous because I don't want to we've got a long way to go before we get to this point, but on the water ferry issue, we've got a private entity that's exploring putting a water ferry together, pretty extensive plan. And you talk about this concept, I think it's really important that the impact fees can be used only for the growth piece of the puzzle, and then we'll have to match it with, for those who are existing, beneficiaries of whatever we do. Could, in a public-private partnership, could the town use the impact fees to support a water ferry and then have the match be the private entity instead of the town matching that in their investment? In other words, can there be a public-private partnership on a water ferry? And could you use the impact fees in that fashion?
Yes, it definitely can be something that is provided by another entity on your behalf. But we're limited to just the infrastructure part of that. We're not gonna kind of mix the operational side of it and the infrastructure part. So your share of capital costs, great, that's what the impact fee will be. So the idea of, you need to put in docks, maybe do some dredging, parking, all that kind of good stuff. Yes, you can do that with the impact fees. You're not gonna be adding in anything as far as a subsidy to another entity or your share of the operating cost. That'll have to be from another revenue source. Okay.
Thank you.
And so all these terms keep getting created, and mobility plan and bike ped plan, all these other things. So just kind of summarize for this. You are, whether you know it or not, you're already part of a long-range transportation plan. You're already part of a transit development plan. You're already part of technically you locally have a bike ped plan, whether that's current or not, right? There's all these different plans that are talking about mobility and transportation that ultimately I think is going to funnel into what they're now defining as a mobility plan. And there's other, Cape Coral, for example, just I think adopted theirs. It's kind of a result of all those things, different entities, different bodies adopting certain things, and then it's got to be kind of one place ultimately that'll feed your impact fee study over time. So I think that's where this is all heading ultimately. Does that make sense? Because right now there's a lot of studies. You got Letran, you got lots of different bodies doing different things and kind of trying to combine it all to make one plan so that you can use that for your fee base, I think is where this is going.
So could this mobility, just hypothetical, could this mobility impact fee be used for land acquisition if it was to be used for, say, BERT, the bicycle thing we were just talking about?
Yeah, you use it for right-of-way acquisition.
Stuff like that.
Yes, you're constrained right-of-way a little bit, so there's some challenges there, but that was one of the things that we talked about. Do you remember, was it like a year and a half ago when we talked about the comp plan and bonus credits and density, and if they donated right-of-way and all that, that would tie into the credits, right? So somebody could give right-of-way to gain density, but then they would also get credits because of the cost and value of that instead of you purchasing it. So yes, there's lots of different ways to do that as far as that goes. But yes, you can also use it to acquire that land.
Very good, thank you.
Just like parks, you can use that impact fee to acquire park land and then build the facilities. So, but anyway, the mobility part's just really important because you're going to start hearing this all over Southwest Florida is local governments adopting mobility plan. And it's really trying to pull from all these other plans that other entities are doing and combine it all into one basically plan for that feeds into the impact fee ultimately.
All right, let's go on to the next slide. We're almost finished. So here's an example like Jason was talking about of something you did recently that we can pull from. Very useful, where you did the Recovery and Resiliency Partnership Project, R2P2. This is your mobility map. It's got specific ideas on there, things that need to be done, like the water taxis and beach access and alternatives to Estero. You want to have some parallel facilities that basically gives people some options of just getting on that one road, and especially for the other modes, not just vehicles. And so all those things we will pull from. We just need help getting dollars on them, and that's kind of where we're at. They're measuring things now, missing links of sidewalks, those kind of things. They're all in the process of getting that data done. And now we just need to turn it into dollars. So like we said, we don't have to start from scratch. There's a lot out there to pull from, but we just basically, we're going to create a list. It's going to have dollars on it. And then we're going to try to kind of prioritize it so that if you feel like the fees are too high, you can take things off the low priority items off. Or, you know, you could say, what about this? Let's move the priority up. And then what's gonna happen is that's like a 10-year list of things. So there might be more itemized things for the first 5 years and more general things for years 6 to 10. That's a common way for us to package it, because our information gets better over time, and we usually have a very short window on actual going to spend the money. So when you do your annual budget, you're like, yes, we're pulling this, you know, we're funding this project. We've got all our funding worked out, so much from impact fees, so much from other sources, and, you know, your budget for next year, that's how we're gonna spend the dollars. So you're just kind of used to seeing infrastructure, impact fees as a line item to funding those projects, and then Joe will know where to pull those out of. So that's kind of how it will work. All right, let's go to the next slide. So the last one is just kind of giving you some examples or ideas for improvement projects that would be needed for additional development. We're already giving you some examples on mobility, so there's bike ped network, paralleling and stereo, improvements to Crescent, Third, and Fifth Streets, more, and, you know, one part of the town, where we would need to kind of give you some options to get to restaurants and retail and that type of thing. We talked about the water taxi ferry, whatever it's gonna be called, so it's more focusing on the land and the water side, kind of improvements. So, you know, might be docks and dredging and that kind of stuff, as well as what's being done on land, but all that can be rolled in. And then just sidewalks. There are some missing links that we need to be done. We need to provide some, buy some land to connect the dots kind of thing. We can do that with impact fees. Park examples, there's been mentioned Newton Beach, a rough estimate of $2 million for those improvements. Doing some trail segments or access improvements, so it could be parking, bike racks, shade structures, some kind of pavers that get, you know, down to the beach. All those kind of things could be part of that.
Real quick on Newton Park, there's a property right next door to Newton Park that's for sale that we've been researching how to find some funding to acquire. If we used an impact fee for that, since it would benefit the whole island, would the impact fee only be able to be utilized for a certain percentage of the purchase of the land to expand the park?
Yeah, that's a good guideline to use. So whatever we come up with as the gross share, there'll be a gross share for each project, because there might be differences depending on what the project is, but there'll be like a weighted average there for all the projects, and that's a good guideline for the finance folks to use. But it would kind of depend on exactly what project it is and what how the growth share is determined. But we can have that general policy that as a default, we're going to fund, you know, 20% with impact fees or something like that.
So Dwayne, since you're talking about it, you said something that kind of caught my attention, the dredging part. You know, the town's looking at implementing some sort of dredging program to be able to, should we ever have to deal with another storm, get assistance from FEMA in dredging these. We weren't able to do that after this storm because we didn't have. So are you saying we could use through this mobility for dredging of canals, or would it be just local waterways?
It would have to be for some kind of some improvement like the water taxi that was specifically not just designed to help private boats come and go, but to help something that you're going to use as a public mobility option that's going to allow people to, you know, get around. It's not just going to be for private vessels. That would be tough.
I'm just curious, I'm just thinking ahead, and, you know, bigger houses usually bring bigger boats, right? And if they're paying an impact fee, is the question gonna be, well, I can't get my 35-foot or 36-foot boat on my lift on this new house that I just paid an impact fee because my canal isn't deep enough?
Yeah, but those are existing rights of way that's more of a maintenance thing
Okay.
at this point, I think.
I think you
There may
answered
be,
that.
we can look at that, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna fall under you should be dredging and maintaining those canals in theory anyway, right? So now to what depth and what size of boat, that's a good point. I don't know, but it's hard to charge everybody an impact fee because a couple houses have
No, I get it.
bigger boats.
No, I get it. Or not everybody's on a canal, or.
Yeah, so we'll look at that, but I think that's going to mostly fall. Now, if you're building and digging out a new canal to create access and just like it's right of way, that may be something. I don't know that we have any that are not built.
Right.
But that's right of way. That all is right of way. So
Do you
And there might be, like you were saying with for the water taxi, you might need to fund some of that up front and either do a bond or something like that. And if that's the case, you could pay debt service or the gross share of debt service from impact fees. That would be a cost recovery. So it's a timing thing. And in some communities, they actually do it like an interfund loan where we're gonna borrow from some fund and pay it back with impact fees. In Arizona, where I currently live, that's a common thing, but it's written specifically into the state law that you can do that. Here, it's a home rule state, you could probably do it just fine. We just have to be real clear how to do that. We don't wanna make it too complicated to get too creative, because that's when you get challenged, but we probably could, if you had to pay back and you were gonna use the impact fees for that, you could do that. I think that's pretty much it. Let's check the last slide. I think that's done. Yeah, so here's kind of just the next steps. We're talking about the preliminary impact fee, actual dollar amounts with staff next month. We, have the fees all set up, the Excel spreadsheets are done. It's more just the capital costs and getting the numbers. And I have plugged in numbers right now just to basically yield what we're currently generating, just to give us some targets to work from. So we're ready to go with that, but we'll do that with staff, then we'll do some refinements, and then we'll come back to you guys probably in March with numbers to look at. And then we'll have to get with the attorney on the whole adoption process, because, Florida's got its own things in the Impact Fee Act about certain milestones, and the local planning agency, you have to review it and that kind of fun stuff. So that'll be, again, we'll follow your lead on that and set those dates, and you have to, but we do have a formal adoption process to get through. And then in Florida, after the fees are approved, you still have to wait 90 days before they become effective, and that's in the state law too. So whatever changes you make, there is that window, so that people have a little bit of notice on what's coming. Those are just all the basis in the state law. So the attorney will help us work out that process, but, there are some steps, even basically once you got the study where you're comfortable with, and we will do some fee comparisons for you, because that's part of your concern about what does the county charge, what does Fort Myers charge, and Punta Gorda, Naples, and, those kind of things. So you'll be aware of those, and we'll get, a reasonable number of comps for you to look at, because that is part of how you judge kind of the market and what other people are doing.
Right.
So that's our presentation. Any more questions? We'll be glad to.
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Dwayne?
No, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Vice Mayor?
I think I got all my questions in. Thank you very much.
John?
Insightful, thank you.
Yes, very forward. Thanks, guys. Look forward to seeing you in a month or so.
Yeah, thank you. So the biggest thing, obviously, if there's other projects that we're missing or on the horizon that you guys come up with, let us know. These are good times to do this.
Okay.
So we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I did have one more question. I just thought of it, sorry.
Okay.
So, on the water taxi thing, what if, like, say if you had private businesses that wanted to implement water taxi and they were paying for it, how does that then work with the impact fees for dredging and that kind of thing?
Just so people don't think Commissioner Woodson's crazy, she had to use the restroom. I asked that same question, but I still think it warrants an answer, but I didn't want
Oh,
people to think you
sorry.
were nuts, but yeah.
There's
Oh,
a-
you did?
Yeah, just
Oh.
while you
Yeah,
were-
so there's a percent
just
share.
fortuitously, right, when you were
Great
gone.
minds think
Yes,
alike.
but please
There you
go
go.
ahead. Answer for her benefit.
It was a percent share. What Dwayne was talking about is basically your upland stuff, your parking lots, your dockage, dredging
Okay.
to accommodate the ferry. There's a percent related to new growth. We'd have to figure out what that percentage is, but that could be provided to them. Not operation and management, not ongoing budget things. It's the capital upstart essentially that's going to be used by the public.
Okay,
And then again, percentage of that being new development versus existing.
existing, okay.
That's the catch. Right?
No, it's fine. I just didn't want you to be embarrassed.
Next is Michael Pop. Good to see you again, sir.
Good morning. Always a pleasure to
Morning.
be here. Well, bad news is I don't have anything as sexy as impact fees to talk about. So, we are in the midst of a major construction project, if you haven't noticed. First and foremost, thank you, all of you in the room, staff, our contractor out in the Marine, our other contractors working on hurricane recovery, but most of all, the residents, the businesses, all the friends of Fort Myers Beach for tolerating us during this process. It has been a monumental effort to get to where we are today. We still have a monumental effort to finish. We thank you for your patience. We are trying to address all the challenges one at a time. Chad has been the shield that has been taking the blows from those folks who have not been as happy with us. But we are trying to knock them all down, and I know that you all have been talking to your constituents to try to help us through it. So thank you for your patience. I also have to apologize to all the shellers in the area. I found the one Genonia that's coming out of the pipe, and so hopefully there'll be a few more coming out. So there are some great seashelling opportunities out there
Cherry
as well.
picking, huh?
The executive privilege of being the guy that gets to walk out on the beach first. So if you want to don steel toe shoes, the hard hat, the gloves, the eyewear, and the yellow vest, and walk into the fray with us, we invite you to do that. We have to keep safety first. So
Be careful what
I
you
was
wish
just gonna
for.
say,
that's right. Well,
your inbox is filled up.
that's all right. That's right. Oh, this is just for this group here. I can't take everybody, but you're paying the tab. So if you do want a first dibs in there, we can load you up with the professional personal protection equipment and get you in there. So Wes Gammons is here with Otton Marine, the vice president. So he's here to answer any questions from the contracting side as well. So if we, I think I have a couple of quick slides to show. This is the north and central beach plan view from the construction plans. The hatched area is what we have completed. So one of the most critical areas, one of the most challenging areas has been completed. It represents about 40% of the total volume, going from Bowditch Point down to around south of Diamond Head into that area, and get past the commercial district. So that is complete. With that said, we had a little storm called Debbie, and then a bigger storm called Helene, and then a really monster storm called Milton. So we have applied for additional funding through the state's hurricane recovery plan and also through FEMA to continue the recovery efforts. We're now on the order of $50 million in terms of the total recovery since Ian on the books for projects either underway, completed, or will be completed to fully restore the island with all the projects. So we are, as I said, knee deep in construction right now. And
Mike, I'm gonna stop you on that.
Sure.
Because I don't think people appreciate what it took to leverage what I would say a modest amount of town funds for county, state, and federal funding for that $50 million. Could you just break that down just in very general terms?
Sure.
How we leveraged a very modest amount from the town to reach $50 million worth of new sand for Fort Myers Beach?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, because the project on the north end was designed and engineered, it was eligible for FEMA funding for Ian recovery. So we did get funding for Ian recovery from FEMA. And now that we're in a maintenance mode, we are able to get funding for Debbie, Helene, and Milton as well. So we've applied for those funds. Again, because you're in an engineered managed beach system, you're able to apply for state cost sharing through their annual funding request. And so we're getting about $14 million from the state towards the construction projects. The state, so thank your legislators because they did appropriate Ian and Nicole recovery funds, almost about $2 million. And after you're done thanking them for Ian and Nicole, ask them to support the Hurricanes Helene and Milton recovery plan that will go before the session, either in special session as the governor's been trying to get, or through the regular session. But we have a nice big price tag. The legislators and the Department of Emergency Management also appropriated $8 million on your behalf for Ian and Nicole recovery. And then continue to parlay that. Thank Lee County, the Board of County Commissioners, and county staff for their assistance through the project and for the tourist development tax, the TDC funds, which is up to $9 million you have in your contract towards that recovery. So the local share of that $50 million is going to be roughly about $2 million. It's
Let me just
county,
say, yeah.
state, federal after that.
Let me just say, as somebody who's been in government for quite a few years, that's an amazing accomplishment to you, our team here in Fort Myers Beach. That's $50 million worth of sand, improvements, both emergency berm, renourishment, et cetera. I just don't know that folks realize what an accomplishment that is for Fort Myers Beach. They're seeing how dramatic renourishment can be in a positive way for Fort Myers Beach, but to leverage those dollars in the way that this group in this room has done, I just think I commend you. I commend our town leadership. I commend the town staff, council, et cetera, because it's a Herculean accomplishment, and I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, thank you. And again, make sure you thank your legislators and county, and then any state officials you come across as well, so.
Agreed.
So what's left? So we're trying to get the south end done now because of the critical nature of, that's the other area that has the worst erosion on the island. So Aetna has advanced, they've added the pipeline and they've added the boosters. Unfortunately, again, we've had, let's back up. We had the protest at the beginning, which delayed us right till 4th of July. So we all made a decision, it doesn't make sense to try to mobilize a dredge and start on July 4th week here. So that actually set us back about 5 weeks. Didn't sound like a lot at the time, but it's coming back to be a lot because now we
And
have,
just for clarity, when you say protest, it wasn't people out there with signs. It was
Oh.
a bid protest.
that is correct, yes. Good
Just want
clarification.
clarification because I
Good
can
clarification,
hear the
yes.
phone ringing already.
Nope, it was another contractor protested the bid. And so, timing-wise, it set us back about 5 weeks. Between, or among Debbie, Helene, and Milton, another 24 days of just pure downtime. Not to mention all of the erosion that occurred. Aetna has been rebuilding the emergency berm along the way. And so, and they're doing that at the unit cost they bid the job on, not for an additional cost. So we reach out and say thank you to Aetna for working with the town in that regard. All these things are adding up to time, and time is not our friend at this time because we got to get done. We want to get done before hurricane season. We also have a bird window on the south end. So Aetna is looking at multiple options within the contract. If you may recall, we added the provision that they could pump sand and truck it into place on the south end. They could import sand from our approved mine to bring sand in. So they're looking at those options today on how we get the south end done before the shorebird nesting season hits a critical juncture, and then have all the beach project done before the sea turtle nesting season. So that is our goal, is to be done and off the beach on the south end sometime in March, and then be done completely as soon as we can with the central section, and certainly be off before sea turtle nesting season, hopefully a lot sooner than that. The second slide is our central beach segment. If you want to flip to the next slide. And as you do that, the yellow boxes, I know it's maybe hard to see, we had a lot of no work zones. You may recall, a lot of people did not want to sign their easements. We've been as respectful as those as we can be. We haven't had any complaints from anybody, so I assume that we've been able to accomplish that. But the fill does get lower in elevation. As you recall, we did lower the fill template so we don't create these gullies in there. If they're existing healthy dune areas, we're trying to protect them. So here's the central section. So it goes all the way down to Lanark. It will go much faster in terms of progress by linear feet. The north end, because of the severe erosion in the business district, a much wider fill. You can now see, as you've been out to the beach, if you haven't been, we encourage you to go out, how many feet we've added and how many bents on the pier we're now out to. The water was lapping at that wall at the base of the pier when we started. So we didn't have pictures for you today. When we come back and do a final presentation, when we're all done, we'll have a nice group of pictures and some things to share at the end of this. So, but we're not celebrating yet because we've still got a lot of work to do. And the last slide is the south end. And so it's a very short fill, but it's, again, very wide. We're going to be adding about 150 to 200 feet of beach through that area, past Leonardo Arms, down to Sun Caper, and then a kind of a thin taper as we try to tie in just north of the bird area. So that's where we're at. And I know that there's been a request for the first booster to be moved because of its closeness to one of the residence units that just reopened. So Aetna's team is working to move that booster. We're going to move it, I believe it's about 200 feet south. There's some vacant lots. Try to center it between two active condos. And we'll continue to try to work with the residents to try to place those boosters that work for Aetna to keep the production rate up, but also try to minimize noise and obstructions.
Do you have a time frame on that? We did just receive another this last week email from that same property.
Yeah, I'm going to ask
concerned with-
Mr. Gammons if he's.
As we speak, it's happening.
It's happening
they're
as we
moving
speak.
it right now.
Okay, so,
So the next day or two, it should be moved.
okay, great,
So that's the plan.
thank you.
Absolutely. And then we're trying to build sand ramps and maintain sand ramps at key locations. If we've missed any, please let us know, and we'll try to get a sand ramp that's basically just over the pipe. In some areas where it's such a high traffic area, they went ahead and buried the pipe. That way it's just easier for them to, instead of trying to keep maintaining sand ramps constantly.
And then one other thing I had for you, it came up this weekend, I didn't think about it, but someone that recently came back down for season was concerned with the pipe from the dredger out to where it comes in and safely passing over that
Yes.
via boat. How far away from the dredger should they say, obviously where it's marked, but is there a certain distance that they should stay away from the dredger to avoid potentially hitting that pipe, that submerged pipe?
Far, far away, but, the answer is always have them reference back to their local notice commanders.
He needs to be on microphone.
So,
Safe passing distance.
this is Mr. Gammons with Aetna. He's
Have him
saying,
come up real quick, would you please?
Sure.
Just let him say that on the record so we know who we're talking to. Just need you to
Great-
identify
Great
yourself.
question. So our pipeline does
I
float.
need you to say your name for the record.
Wes Gammons, on Marine Construction, Vice President. So our pipeline does float a little bit behind the dredge, and it's well marked and lit at nighttime, so they should not obviously go near the dredge. But generally, you want to stay about 500 to 1,000 feet away from the dredge and try to stay in the navigational channel. What we will do, we will see, is a lot of people will try to cut through, and local knowledge, they try to cut through in areas where they were able to cut through before. We want to make it clear that all the signage and all that stuff is out there to follow it and stay as far away as you possibly can. Trying to hug the beach, not a good idea. We do have pipeline, it's on the bottom, it stays submerged, but you never know, there's cables and there's different things, there's tides, exactly. So especially sailboats, with keels and things of that nature, they want to be.
Always good to stay in the beacons.
It is always good to stay in between the beacons, yeah, but a lot of people don't do that. So a lot of people are out there having fun, and we get it, and we do our best to keep our catch boats around so that we can guide them, through.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott, you got any questions for Mike?
Not right now.
Karen?
No, it looks fantastic. I was out there this past weekend, and I mean, it just looks amazing.
thank you.
Jim?
I do have a few questions. Mike, you're my favorite consultant, so I'm glad you're here this morning. Thanks
My
for
best
suffering
marketing
through the
guy.
impact fees. Yeah. Mike, the retaining wall, a seawall, if you will, right now, for Leonardo Arms, I've heard when the renourishment is complete on the south end, I've heard the initial extension of sand outward towards the ocean, or towards the Gulf of America,
There
if you
you
will.
go.
Is I've heard any numbers, you just this morning said 150 to 200. I've heard 400, I've heard 450, and obviously Mother Nature's gonna do its thing after it goes out. But what is that official number from that seawall at Leonardo Arms going out? How much additional sand should we expect initially? I know it'll naturally erode back, but
Right, so the template is 300 feet wide, but very quickly, Mother Nature's gonna take a good scalp of that sand and fill the underlying severely eroded portion of the profile. So if you recall during the design stages, we talked about the beach is like an iceberg, 7/8 of it's underwater. So we overfill where we can construct and then let Mother Nature move that sand underwater. So the goal is to have 150 feet of beach after the equilibration process in front of that wall.
so after all is settled, the goal is to have 150 feet of additional beach in that particular area on the south end.
Yes, sir.
The initially though, it'll go out 300 feet. Then is that the number?
Correct.
And then recede back naturally, hopefully, and stay stable at 150. Given your professional experience as a coastal engineer, when we make a substantial infusion of sand like we're doing on the south end, is there any chance that it could favorably impact the currents that are creating some of the erosion issues on the south end of that particular area? Could we get lucky in having all that new sand potentially change the way the currents flow? Obviously, we can't affect hurricanes, can't affect other things, but is there a chance we could get some relief as a result of that infusion of sand?
It sounds like a lot of sand, but in the scheme of the shoal of Big Carlos Pass and the system, it's a very small quantity. So I don't think we're going to see very measurable changes in the currents. No, sir.
Sir, your advice to those folks who live in that area at this point?
Well, that beach is designed to provide them with the first line of protection from the storm events. Unfortunately, for events like Ian and Helene and Milton, the beach can only do so much. We're not building plus 12 or plus 16 high dunes or anything like that, so this beach is there for the first line of protection. It's there for recreational purposes. It's there for sea turtles and for shorebirds and for shelling and all those wonderful things. So other than that, the analysis we did on the impact on Big Carlos is there's certainly going to be some sand movement back into Big Carlos Pass. You're going to start to see sand movement and feed, San Carlos Point. That whole San Carlos Point grew over the last 20-some years as Little Estero Island merged and welded onto Estero Island and then moved down. And so that process will continue. So we're not going to change the coastal processes with the beach. We're just translating the point of erosion seaward.
Will the infusion of sand on the southern end here, will that also include an emergency berm?
We have added some berms on both sides. We've had the recovery, and where we don't get the pumped sand complete, we're going to bring that sand in with the Helene Milton money in a subsequent event.
So there could be some additional relief later on if those
That is
funds
correct.
become available.
That is correct. We're trying to restore lateral access, so we have requested funds to do that through the state's recovery plan. I'm afraid I didn't memorize that number for today. Chad, you remember, was it about 10 million that we ended up with that request for Helene Milton? Ring a bell? I apologize, I did not pull that sheet up before I came today, but it was a substantial request for additional funds on the north end that got eroded, that we had already pumped in place, and then plus some additional berms that got wiped out, and that lateral access on the south end where that got scalloped out. So we can get that number to you, Chad can get that over to you, but that's hopefully what will be approved at this session, and we would do a future truck haul project to bring that sand in like we did for the emergency berms in the past.
So Mike, throughout the whole beach renourishment project, and it sounds like we've got some, things are a little bit in flux because we're waiting for this additional funding for additional emergency berm sort of enhancement. Are there any areas on the beach that are done already where the emergency berm is complete, where they can begin a lot of people ask me, when will the plantings begin?
Sure, so Chad's reviewing a draft set of plans and specifications for the dune plantings that'll go out on the street. And so we should be doing planting this summer to get a lot of it done that'll be in place. But truthfully, nothing is done yet because we still have to finish the grading. We still have to pull all the pipe and all the boosters off the beach. They have to come in and till. We have to smooth grade a couple of places. So we are still very much from the point where we started to the point where we're at to the south end. We are still in a construction zone. While we have turned it back over to the public use and everybody's use of it, recognize when we go to demobilize, all that pipe's gonna come off the beach and it's all gotta get smooth graded and tilled and cleaned up. And then we'll start the planting. There's no sense planting if we're still gonna be doing all this work, so.
And just to refresh people's memories, do you all do the planting as part of your project, and either the commercial development or the homeowner, they have input into how it's done, but you do the planting? Is that in essence how it will work?
So you, the town, will bid it out, competitively bid it out for nurseries and landscapers who do this work. We'll be your engineering eyes and ears like we have been. And so we've put together a set of plans. And Chad's been the guy communicating with folks as to planting plans. There are several in the dune management plan. We're going to do a base planting for the majority of the properties, and then we will work on a subsequent planting for enhancements to, let's say that in a perfect world, we would know where everybody wants their 10-foot wide access through their dune. But we're not going to know that, and many people aren't here until we get done and plant it. So we're going to line up the accesses through the dune planting with where we saw them historically on somebody's property. We tried our best to take the pre-Ian photography and line up the accesses. So if somebody says, well, you know, I've decided to move my access from this point to maybe to the end of my property from the center or something. Under the dune management plan, they'll have the ability to work with the town to do that, or at the time of construction, if they're here, we'll have the planters do it and cover it right away. So that's going to be a kind of a phased approach for the plantings as well.
And if we're blessed with some relief from future hurricanes for a while, what's your professional experience with respect to those plantings? How effective are they in retaining all this wonderful $50 million worth of sand that we've invested in?
Absolutely. So obviously there's a significant part of sand the seaward of the dune. But your dune does multiple things. So it will trap windblown sand. So that nice big 150-foot wide beach as Mother Nature, it's called an aeolian process, that the sand's transported by winds. It'll start to trap and capture that sand, and we see dunes grow in elevation over time. And that happened, if you look at some of the post-construction profiles from the 2011 project, the dunes were pretty much planted at grade, and they grew 4 or 5 feet high. And so, unfortunately, with a dune management plan that allows every individual property to have their own way, you might have somebody that wants a robust dune and wants to grow it, but then your neighbor may only want low-lying doesn't block my view. So dunes can provide a good measure of storm protection, but it really has to be a substantial dune that goes for, thousands and thousands of feet north and south. So we have a disjointed dune system because of the personal preferences on Fort Myers Beach, and that's fine, because every dune will provide some measure of some protection or habitat for some species, or simply capture that windblown sand and keep it on the beach and not in somebody's pool cage or somewhere else, so. Thank you. Back on the question that was asked, we asked the state for $11.6 million for Helene Milton recovery.
Very good. My last question is, you can either take this or maybe Wes will take this, is when one looks out on the horizon right now, I was just at Chris Ante the other day looking at your good work. You see what looks like the Royal Navy on the horizon. Can you explain what those ships are and which ones are ours, which ones are Lover's Key?
Sure.
Just kind of walk us through what people see out of the horizon.
Sure. Can we bring up the first slide? Because so Otna's Royal Navy will be out of Matanzas Pass, and so it's off the picture, but there's a black bold line that extends from the beach out into the Gulf. So the dredge is sitting out there, and they have a booster, a tender barge, and the dredge. So it's a pretty tight-knit group. The Royal Navy to the south that you see, there's the Lover's Key, Lee County project, and they have an unloader, a booster, the scows coming in because that sand source is sitting 30 miles as the crow flies offshore.
I hate to do this, but since everybody's looking this on the south end, many people assume it's related to our renourishment. It's Lover's Keys, but just take a second and explain the terms of when you mention those ships.
Yes.
Explain what that means.
Sure. So while it's also in our permit, and in the future, this is where we'll be going to get sand for, say, 8 or 10 years from now. There's a beautiful sand shoal. Actually, there's 3 sand shoals that sit off of Sanibel Captiva. It's part of the Captiva Ridge. And so the Lee County project is using a it's not a hopper dredge. It's a cutterhead dredge with a spider barge and scow system. So the dredge, just like Otna's dredge, is chewing up and pumping the sand from the Gulf bottom through a series of pipes. The spider barge is a 6-armed creature that moves up and down and fills scows, which is an empty bin that floats. A tug will come up to the scow, and it will move that scow into the nearshore waters where it's called an unloader, which acts like a dredge. It actually has an arm, and it lowers into the scow, into that empty bin, which now has sand in it, and it re-slurries the sand. It pumps high-velocity jets of water into that sand, suspends it, and it sucks the sand out of the scow, and it pumps it through a pipe that's also submerged onto the beach. So that's what you see to the south. And because they are so far offshore, the equipment needed is a much larger operation.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks
You're
for all
welcome.
you're doing. Thank you, Chad. Thank you to our town team. It's a tremendous effort.
You're very
John?
welcome. Thank you.
Mike, thanks for all your hard work. I appreciate it. Just some clarification, though, just because I think it causes confusion. As someone who actually lives on the south end, we did not qualify for the beach renourishment. It's stopping currently at Sun Caper, correct?
Just south of Sun Caper, that is correct.
Right.
Because of the natural accretion that
Accretion,
occurred,
yeah.
you're not designated critically eroding. Therefore, you're not eligible for state funding, which means you're not eligible for TDC funding. So all the work that's been done down there has been hurricane recovery funds through the emergency berm and then through the DEM grant.
And that's been done, the emergency berm has been placed, and that's appreciated as well. So thank you for that clarification. Now, with this new funding from the state for the last couple of storms, is there any possibility of taking care of scours down at that end? Or is that going to be something that's not going to happen,
Yes.
again, because of the previous?
Gotcha. Okay. So the question, so yes, the Chad and I put together the funding that would address the scour and lateral access. We will have to apply for what's called an emergency permit under the emergency final orders. We are allowed to rebuild the shoreline to pre-Helene condition, pre-Milton condition. It requires a separate authorization to do that. I've done it now for 2 other clients. And so when that funding is in place, we will request the opportunity to try to restore that scour area to pre-Helene Milton condition. That'll go through U.S. Fish and Wildlife, it'll go through National Marine Fisheries, through the feds and through the state. So we present that information to them. I think as long as we work outside of nesting season, I don't see any hurdle with getting that authorization.
Okay, thank you for all the clarifications, I appreciate it.
You're
It
welcome.
makes it a lot easier for folks to understand, I think.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Question and a couple comments before we make just for people, if you have the information, as Herculean of a task as just Fort Myers Beach is, countywide, from the far north to the far south, could you give an update as to people as to how much sand it's taking to do this project and roughly the cost? If you know it. If you don't know it,
For the current dredging or for all the county?
for the entire county.
Oh, wow.
It's
Okay.
it's a massive project that, we're one part of it. But
Sure.
the dollar amounts are astounding, and the amount of sand is pretty
Sure.
astounding.
I don't have all of the statistics. So I am also, Coastal Engineering Consultants is we're managing Lover's Key and Bonita with Lee County. That is a $40 million project, and that is about the same volume. It's about 950,000 yards, give or take, which is what your volume is, I think, 940 or 930. So very similar in terms of magnitude. And so your recovery plan, including all the hurricane recovery, has been that price tag of about $50 million now. That's, let's say, $52 million when you add the extra dollars that Chad clarified to get us past Helene and Milton. For Bonita and Lovers, it's about $40 million. They did not do any emergency berms, but they do have FEMA funds for North Bonita and for Lovers Key. That's another several $1 million. And then Sanibel is undergoing a major renovation right now. I don't have their cost. I'm not the engineer of record for that one. And Captiva, I don't know their current plan. When they bid their project last year, they got several bids. I believe they were in the $30 to $35 million range as well for about 800,000 yards of sand on Captiva. That's pre-Debbie, Helene, and Milton, so I don't know their current. But yeah, you're talking roughly $150 million plus or minus in Lee County for probably 3 to 4 million yards when you add up everybody. Again, I don't have Sanibel and Captiva,
Right.
but
Yeah,
it's
it's substantial. amount.
substantial. Absolutely.
The other question I have is homeowners that chose not to be part of this project that are maybe seeing now the benefits of the project, especially after Helene and Milton. Is there an avenue for them to work with Aetna after the fact? Obviously, it'd be at their own cost now, probably, to be able to be part of the program or added to it after, outside of the scope of the work that they're already under? Or would they have to contract with them separately?
Couple things to think about. So first of all, are they within the permitted limits of our beach project? So if they're from Bowditch to Lanark, or from Leonard Arms to Sun Caper, that's the permitted limits. We have some wiggle room with Aetna while they're here working. But we have very little time to add anybody at this point. We're under the gun to get done timing-wise. If you are outside of the permitted fill limits, then there's nothing that we or Aetna can do for you personally right now. But you, the individual homeowner, under the emergency orders, there's the ability to restore beach and dunes to pre-Helene and Milton condition under the current emergency orders. Now, there's an expiration date to those. There's things that you have to abide by. There's 39 pages of things, but there's only about 3 pages that deal with private property owners and what they can and can't do on the beach and dune system. So if the emergency orders expire, then they'd have to go back and get a coastal construction control line permit to bring in beach-compatible sand through the dune system. And so there are lots of contractors that do this work. There's lots of engineers and environmental professionals that can help individual private property owners. So hopefully that answered, at least give the folks that are listening some ideas of what they can and can't do.
Okay. And then the last thing, I just wanted to thank you and Chad and Aetna for working with that property owner on the north end and address. I mean, for the most part, that's at least as much as I've heard. That's the most complaint I've heard as far as people are just happy it's getting done and looking forward to seeing it done, but appreciate you guys working with them to try to alleviate their
Absolutely.
major
We
issues.
appreciate their patience. Obviously, they were closed. It was a great spot. It's the sweet spot for where the dredge pipe makes the turn. Otta's willing to make a small shift to address the challenges up there with the homeowners. And so hopefully we don't put it where hopefully the condo that we're putting it next to doesn't open a month from now, and we have to deal with it again. But at some point, we will be done.
It is.
So a little more patience,
Yeah.
and we'll be out of here.
And again, just to reiterate, your goal is to be done by November, start of turtle season,
May.
or May, I'm
May.
sorry.
May 1.
May.
By,
Well,
The start of turtle.
the start of May, yes.
I know
Not
Otta
yet.
wants to get out of here a lot sooner than that. We all want to be out of
I
here
bet
sooner.
they
We
do.
all want to be out of here sooner than that. But till we get everything cleaned up, get everything tilled, get everything smooth graded. If we say April 30th and we finish April 15th, I don't think anyone's going to complain. So
All right, thank you, Michael, for coming
you're very
back
welcome.
on.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
God bless.
Yeah, I think I wrote May through November. All right, next, advisory committee items and reports. We don't have anyone here for that. The approval of the minutes, we have town council minutes from January 8th, 2025, and the management and planning session from January 8th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from those two meetings?
So moved.
A motion by Counselor King,
I'll second.
seconded by Counselor Woodson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Next is our consent agenda, which we have nothing. Items removed from the consent agenda, we have nothing. That brings us to our public hearing. What's the most efficient way to deal with this?
Just to read the title for the record,
Okay.
and then if there could be a motion made and acted upon.
Okay, let me get to it here. This is a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving with conditions, or denying special exception, SEZ 202-40186, for use of an existing lot to provide commercial parking spaces in the downtown zoning district of the Town of Fort Myers Beach Land Development Code for property located at 1479 Estero Boulevard, providing for Scrivener's errors, severability, and an effective date. Is there a motion to approve moving this?
Yeah. To
Continue.
To continue this
Date certain.
date certain of February 3rd at 9 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Counselor Woodson, seconded by Counselor King. Any further discussion? Counselor Woodson?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Vice Mayor?
Aye.
Counselor Safford?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. That motion carries unanimously. Next is our administrative agenda. The first is a resolution of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving an agreement between the Town of Fort Myers Beach and Kelly Brothers, Inc. to construct the Dinghy Dock Project and Hurricane Recovery Project, authorizing the town manager to execute the agreement and expand budget funds on behalf of the town, and providing for an effective date. Town manager? Or Frankie?
Frankie will be,
So basically, I know we've talked about Kelly Brothers, it seems like for the last 6 months, every meeting. This is basically, the last time we discussed this, they were awarded the contract after it went out to bid. This is basically just ratifying the contract, it's been executed, and now we can progress. As far as the funding source, again, this project is based on the belief that we are going to be fully reimbursed through FEMA and FDM for this project.
How much money were we talking, Frankie?
I don't have the figure in front of me, sir.
It's right in our packet here, it was
Yeah.
100 and something. Just a second, I can find it.
It's 119.
It's at the bottom, I think, isn't it?
Can I ask clarification? Has the agreement been signed already? I don't think so. I think this is the actual
This is the-
approval.
Right. This is the
And then
actual
the
approval.
authorization for the signature.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, the resolution has two figures there. It has $204,645 for a concrete dock, and included a bid alternative of $129.45 for an aluminum dock.
Yes.
I'm not too sure where we went with
need
that.
Jack back.
I know it's not a concrete dock, so we are progressing with the aluminum dock, sir.
Okay, so $129.45 then.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are not going with the concrete?
That's what we had underneath the Matanzas Bridge at one time. I believe, I wanna say FDOT had ownership of that fishing pier dock area.
Yeah.
That was removed after the storm, and I think we're all in agreement that we were going to go to an aluminum type dock.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the plans, make sure that they don't show concrete.
They
On
might at
there.
the abutment, sir, for the anchoring purposes, but not for the entire structure.
Yeah, the floating dock looks like it's a frame type.
Yes.
So is the aluminum dock, is that more,
Flex-
what's the word, flexible when
It's-
things
it's-
come
it'd
in
be
like that?
More resilient and
More
be able
resilient,
to,
okay.
yes, yes. and Be
Okay.
able to, move a little bit more, again,
With
nothing
the
moved with,
currents and
the
things, right?
danger and impact that we had with Hurricane Ian, but, yeah, through the last couple of storms, remember, we bought that small portion of a floating dock with, the help of Snookbite, who, offered that to the town at a really good price. That's what we've been currently using down there now, and that's made it through the last 4 storms very well.
Okay, good.
Well, if you look at packet page 127,
Just
in their
right there.
plans, it shows concrete float on their drawings. So,
Concrete
I'm
walk,
a little concerned we
right.
don't know if it's aluminum or if it's concrete.
The aluminum part is the part that have existing. I know we're doing modifications to that. The concrete float is similar to what we had before, sir. So it does have the box that's made out of, like you say, you would do a fuel barge with or a regular floating barge with. And then the inside set is based on aluminum piers.
I'm just trying to find the page of the alternate. John, what page were you on for the alternative bid? Because that's the one that you're seeking approval for.
I just
right?
looked at the resolution.
Yeah, I know it says it in the, I read it in the contract. I'm just trying to find it. Someone finds it before me, please let me know.
I'm looking
Scanning
too.
through it.
I'm not finding materials.
Well, it talks about it on page 116. It talks about concrete, and then it says aluminum dock alternative. But I'm trying to see where it specifies that it is the alternative that you're asking for approval on.
Yeah, currently the structure that we had was a floating concrete block dock, prior to Ian.
So Mayor, if I can offer an option?
Yes.
In the resolution, we can specify that it is the aluminum dock that council is approving, and then we would amend the attached document accordingly.
Chad, do you have any clarification on the dock?
Aluminum concrete.
Chad Schutz, yeah, aluminum, we're going with the aluminum. It's more practical and it does have the added benefit of being cheaper even though FEMA's paying for it, but for practicality, aluminum.
Thanks for the clarification, Chair.
Yes, sir, you're welcome.
All right. Is there a motion to approve resolution 25-52? If there's no other questions, I should say.
Should it be amended for the,
Yes,
state then
to specify that it is aluminum, and then a contract authorizing us to change whatever exhibits need to be fixed, we can do that.
I'll go ahead and move that as amended.
Okay, got a motion by Counselor King. I will second it. Any further discussion? Counselor King?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Vice Mayor?
Aye.
Counselor Woodson?
Aye.
Counselor Safford?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next is item B. This is a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, authorizing the town manager or his designee to approve STA number 8 in the amount of $182,340 with Tetra Tech under RFQ-22-25-AD for utilities permit reviews and any associated documents and providing for an effective date.
This goes to the periodic reviews that we have Tetra Tech do for driveways, swales, and flowability on projects. So anytime somebody's constructing a new driveway or we're coming into a swale area, we rely on their engineering expertise. This just gets us through the next period, covering those expenses.
For what specific projects?
The ongoing, utility,
Stormwater.
locate of driveways, swales, and flowability.
Questions for Frankie, John?
The 182,000 is a budgetary item then, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Was this budgeted?
This would be included in the budget under the contracted services.
Okay. And is it reimbursable or no?
This is just ongoing services, so as a new
Okay.
homeowner would come in and go for a driveway
Gotcha.
permit, those type of things. Or if we're doing any kind of major swale work, say there was 3 empty lots on your street due to Hurricane Ian, and now we're building back, now we have to check for pitch and flow.
Is there any way we can do some of this internally?
Without an engineer on staff, a regular licensed PE, no.
Okay,
And that would take you well over what the STA is.
thank you.
Karen, any questions?
No, I'm good.
Vice Mayor?
No.
All right, is there a motion to approve or deny Resolution 25-30 STA number 8 for the utilities permit reviews?
Go ahead and move it.
All right.
Second.
Got a motion by Counselor King, seconded by Counselor Safford. Any further discussion? Counselor King?
Aye.
Counselor Safford?
Aye.
Counselor Woodson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderhoff?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. That motion carries unanimously. Next is item C, our 2025 Florida legislation appropriation requests.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff's been working on this since the last meeting. Obviously, before that, come on up, Jason. Jason, as our legislative liaison, has been working close with our lobbyist, Rana, and we want to talk about what we
Yeah,
presented.
absolutely.
He's given you a document that we've identified, but we still feel like there's some others we want to identify.
Yeah, so good morning, Council. Jason Freeman for the record. At your last meeting, we kind of started those initial discussions, handed out a draft flyer. We've worked with our finance department and Joe, as well as the administration and the mayor, talked with our town lobbyist, Rana, and Ron Book's office. We've narrowed down some of these projects to the 3. And then with Joe's help, we've actually put some numbers to those appropriation requests as well for this time, so.
Questions for Jason? I have a couple that I would like to add to it.
Okay.
One is, I don't know if you want a PED number, essentially it is the high priority mitigation application for the generators that we're looking to add to our structures. And the other one, it's PID 142098. I don't know if that number will help you.
I think so.
Yeah, I got it.
It's FMB-003, and then FMB-006, PID 142252. That is the elevation of the pump stations at both the north and south water tower for 631, 881, 60, and the previous one was for 993,000. And those are both related to Hurricane Ian, correct?
Gotcha.
Because we are not allowed this legislative year to ask for Milton or Helene yet, right?
correct.
Because it hasn't. And why is that, Frankie? I know you told me about this morning, but for the benefit of everyone.
Until they actually meet and convene and talk about what is available. I know that when we met with our legislative team up in Tallahassee, they're telling us to, start getting our list prepared, those type of things. Once they have session, I know the governor wanted to have a special session to announce that instant recovery. The money I would dare to say is there, but it hasn't been allocated for that specific purpose. So until it gets that allocation, we cannot ask for that money. But we will have a chance at that as well. And we already have things prepared for Helene and Milton.
So we would just want to include on our request to just have them make sure that they fund these, or are we going to do an additional funding request for it? It looks like, because these are already in the system?
The ones that the mayor was talking about are through our PA program rather. And what we would ask at that time is just to be funded instead of matched.
Okay, so there are.
Yes, we're not looking for a match. These would be funding,
Okay,
hurricane-related funding asks that we're asking for.
gotcha.
For mitigation.
Perfect.
For mitigation,
Then
yes.
we would recoup or repay with any FEMA funds that we did recoup. those projects.
Yes, however, that needs to be worded. I know Jason knows what he's,
Gotcha.
those were the two big ones that stuck out to me that I would like to ask to the,
Absolutely.
and then inside our, what we send up there.
Sure.
I think it's important to add pictures of exactly what
Yes.
we had, what we are
Perfect.
look like now, and what we are looking to do. The more specific we can be, the better off I
Absolutely.
think we'll be.
Yeah.
Legislators love pictures. Seriously, they do, very helpful, very helpful.
Yeah,
Well, it
that-
helps them understand, otherwise it's just words on a page.
Yep.
Yeah,
Visual,
no,
yeah.
absolutely. I think the forms are a little more, to the standard template there, but I think that those handout sort of things are really effective on that sort of thing. So we can customize that as much as we want, because that handout is completely ours, so happy to change anything we want, add anything, and I'll work with Nicole and everybody to try and get some photos from the records here, and we'll put some on there.
So is there a limit to how many categories we can ask for?
No,
There's not,
No?
you can ask for anything, doesn't mean you're gonna get it, but you can ask
Right,
for it. yeah.
right. But
It has been told to us while we've been up there that it's important that we ask specifically for hurricane-related
Right.
projects that we're still waiting for funding on,
Okay.
whether they're shovel-ready, whether they're town-matched, or whether it's FEMA-specific that we're waiting for funding on.
Okay.
That's kind of the direction we've been given. So basically, anything we're still dealing with Ian would be
Right.
fair game.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they
Okay.
just recommend, shovel ready, and then 50%-ish match, at least, I think, really helps us stand out on those, so.
And I think it's fair to say that most of the projects that we have from Ian that we're waiting for funding from some sorts are as close to project ready. I mean, we've given them the cost, we know what the costs are, we provide the costs, just a matter of procuring it,
Correct.
funding it.
That is correct.
Does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Or, I think we have, till the end of today?
Yeah,
Just
we're gonna
to-
get the drafts forms to Ron Book's office, and then they'll submit those to our representative, or to Mr. Patana and, Senator Martin, so. And then we'll go from there, so we might have a little flexibility on if anything changes, but kinda need to get those drafts rolling and then just start that process, so.
Yeah, so if you haven't had a chance, I would suggest if you can go through, can you make sure that everybody's got, if they don't already have a copy of this? Just to look through it, never hurts to
Absolutely.
add more.
No, absolutely, yeah, so we can go with the 3 on there, and then we'll add these 2 on there, and then that gives us, 5 for now, and if anything changes, just let me know, and we'll make sure we copy, keep you involved and everybody as well, so we'll give some updates afterwards as well.
All right. Do you need any sort of motion for this, or?
Motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve the legislative recommendations for 2025.
Second.
All right, motion by Vice Mayor Adderholt, seconded by Counselor Woodson. Any further discussion? Vice Mayor Adderholt,
Aye.
Counselor Woodson,
Aye.
Counselor Safford,
Aye.
Counselor King,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Next is a town council approval of a recurring special event for yoga classes at the following locations: Bayside Park, Mound House, Fort Myers Beach Library, and Bay Oaks Recreation Center, once opened. This-
Yeah, it's just a permit that came through. The only couple things on that is that we don't have any jurisdiction to permit anything at the library, so that one is out. For a special event, that would be on their own. And then Bay Oaks is not currently ready, and then we have a few different fee schedules for these as well, as far as the permitting goes. We have an hourly rate at Bayside Park. We have a contracted services 70-30 split at Bay Oaks. And Mound House is a grounds fee as well. So just so you guys are all aware of those permits and how the structure works as far as fees.
This also says we're asking to request waiving of parking fees.
That, I don't believe we're quite at the point where we can waive those yet.
Well, the only place would be Bayside Park.
Right.
How would you monitor who's parking there to go to the yoga or?
That's what's.
Correct.
It'd be difficult.
Yeah, and we're kind of getting to the point where we, especially some of these big events, that we need to charge for parking, and that's just one of our revenue sources. We're not trying to gouge anybody, but that is a big revenue source, whether they're eating at a restaurant or, doing any other activity down there. And this typically, or technically, except for the contracted services, isn't really a town event right now, since it is just a permitted event.
When, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna suggest that we strike the parking thing altogether, because it would only make any difference at Bayside Park, and we can't do that.
Speaking of Bay Oaks, the question keeps getting asked to me, is when do we foresee that being open? I know that you, in the past, you've said you don't have a date. Do you have any update as to?
No update as far as timeline. I know that contractors are getting signed and in place. We just got the word on Friday. We got the email about the concession stand part of it. So that Bay Oaks Rec Center is part of it. The restrooms out here and the concession stand were also part of it. They should be starting very soon. The contract was awarded to Extreme Contractors and Painting for the concession stand. So that's moving here soon. We haven't gotten anything fully awarded through our insurance company for Bay Oaks, but it is in the process. They've gotten most of their vendors lined up. There was a question on the flooring that we did respond to. So we're in contact with the flooring people because we're gonna do epoxy on there. So we're just waiting on a quote from them, and then we're all ready to go. So I'm hoping in the next month or so they can start. I can't put a actual date to it, but they are really close to starting the work.
Well, it pertained a little bit to this, but we'll talk about it under managers, because I got a couple more things I want to ask about that specific.
And also, we have, our insurance company is the one that's running that we are not. We
That's
did not put
part
the
of the
bid
question I
out. We
had.
did not do that. That is being run by FMIT, our
Yeah,
insurer.
Yeah, we insured, and I know I updated, at work cab about all that. But yeah, that's insurance that took over this time. We upped thankfully upped our insurance after Ian. So they actually are taking it all over, and we don't have to contract out anything on our part. The insurance company is finding the contractors and awarding bids.
Okay.
But they are moving much faster than after Ian, I can tell you that.
Yep.
All right, is there a motion to approve the reoccurring special event or deny yoga with Annie? Was Annie here? You want to come up and say a few things before we? I wondered if that was you sitting back there.
Yeah, hi. What, did I give off a vibe? Hi, Annie Neef, 125 Pearl Street. All I want to do is stretch the town hamstrings. I have my students who are asking me, like, when are you coming back? When are you going to be on the beach? Can we be at the fitness court over at Bay Oaks? We really don't have any parking fees. We don't have, I'm not going to be putting up tents or having any issues. It's a group of people who want to come together for an hour, say namaste, and be on our way.
Do you have a schedule yet?
Not yet, waiting for you guys.
Well, if approved, can you provide that schedule to staff so we can get it out on the town's website?
I would
Published.
very much like to do that. Turns out that 8 a.m. on Mondays at Bayside Park is wildly unpopular. So, really, so I just need a little flexibility. It takes a minute for people to know you're there. So what it was last year was Wednesdays at Bay Oaks, 9 a.m. Well, that's out of the question now. And Fridays at the Mound House, just under the tree, which was great. I can't believe that's my job. And I'm just looking to do that, or somewhere on the beach, which again was, mixed results last year with the weather.
So can you use the fitness area?
I would love to, or if not, right on the court, that little area of lawn that's right over there.
Yeah,
I don't have any issue with it.
I think it'd be great. Why did you say that Bayside was not?
But get one, maybe two people every couple of weeks. So last year, there was some sort of, sewer truck that was there, and the smell was a little overwhelming, but things have changed. We're a couple of hurricanes after that.
Right.
Well, my wife does yoga, and people ask me if I do yoga, and I tell them, no, I do Jaeger.
Oh, well, you can do that.
That gives you a whole different downward dog.
Well, we'd love to see you.
Well,
All that time on the beach in Hawaii, and that's the best you could come up with.
Come on, that was pretty good.
I think we should reconsider Bayside Park, quite honestly. At least try it.
I'd like to try it again. It's a great spot. The fitness court is just something, I don't know, like, I'll do my commercial here for it. I'm a fitness court ambassador for Depew, New York, our little town up north, and it's wonderful. There's so many things you can do. You just scan the app, brings up the website, tells you all the different moves you can do, and it's free, and not enough people are using it, so I'm hoping to bring some people there.
You might want to provide some lessons on that too.
I'd love to.
If I could add some clarity, so when we were talking about the parking and everything, that's our base application. So I think when our staff that was doing the special events part of this, they just put through a regular application, not knowing exactly what was coming before you this morning. So if I could clear up some of that confusion.
I think she cleared it up pretty well.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, now is there a motion to approve or deny Yoga with Annie?
I'll make a motion to approve Yoga with Annie.
I'll second.
I got a motion by Counselor Woodson, seconded by Vice Mayor Adderholt. Any further discussion? Counselor Woodson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Counselor Safford?
Which is more like
And
a
I'm an
run.
aye as well. Motion carries unanimously. Good luck, have fun, keep us posted,
Thank you, I will.
and don't forget to bring Mr. Yeager.
All right, you're all invited, thank you.
All right, next is the item D, the contract extension, discussion of the town manager contract extension. Town manager?
Thank you, Mayor. If you'll indulge me for a few moments. First, I'd like to say how proud I am of the team I put together to help the town recover from the hurricane and just
Hurricanes.
get back. They've done a remarkable job and are very in a very complicated situation. I also like to talk about a future exit strategy for myself as your town manager. The past 6 months, my wife Susan and I have been discussing what the next phase of our life will look like. I've been working over 50 years and hope to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Being faced with the possibility of extending my contract for another 1 to 2 years, I feel the time has come for me to return home to North Florida and not seek a contract extension. I'd like to be officially giving a 100-day notice to help with the transition. My current contract calls for a 120-day notice or an agreed-upon notice. I want to thank each of you as well as so many residents for the opportunity and support I've received. I want to thank the staff and all town employees for all they have done to help Fort Myers Beach recover from the devastating hurricane.
Well,
Thank you.
I know that was probably pretty difficult for you, knowing who you are, and although I respect your decision, I wish I heard something else, but you have to take care of you and your family, and, you know, I've seen the best of this island and I've seen the worst since Hurricane Ian, and some of the things you guys have had to endure, it's not right, but again, I respect your decision, but and wish you nothing but the best, and I will support your request. Vice Mayor?
Well, I have to say I'm a bit stunned and saddened, but certainly wish you nothing but the best, Andy. You're a man of character, and you've been given to our island for such a time as this, and I'm very thankful for it. I would just ask, and I know you'll work with us, that you help us with that transition, and you, if it takes a little longer, I hope you'll stay with us. I hope you'll get us to where we need to get to. You've left us in a good place. I hope you'll take a moment this morning and talk a little bit about your accomplishments. I think we have a tendency to focus on the negative on this island at times, some. And I'd like to hear some of the positive things that have been accomplished over the last few years. I'd also be interested in what you consider our ongoing challenges as an island. I have to say wasn't prepared for this, so I believe public service is a calling, and I thank you for answering the call, and I'll have more to say once I get my thoughts together, but thank you for your service.
John?
I guess I am very stunned as well, and Mayor, I'll talk about a little bit what you talked about. the good of the island and the bad of the island, and it's the bad of the island lately that's, I think, driven this. And I'm sorry to see this happen. Andy, you're a good man. You know, I've talked to you about that many times. I've kidded you many times about, because music is important to me, but while I'm not the #1 fan of the man from Tennessee, I'm in the top 5. And I can't thank you enough for all you've done for this island. I'm happy for you and your family, because I know how hard it is to have a long distance involvement with family. So thank you.
Counselor Stafford.
Yeah, I'm right now kind of at a loss for words, but Andy, you know, as Councilman King said, families come first. So, you know, all throughout my career, as a manager and as a business owner, I've always said that families come first, and that's the most important. I'm saddened that you've made this decision, but I get it. I understand. You know, it's just like everyone else. I was looking to praise you and tell you what a great job you've done. Especially, you know, we got clobbered by Milton. I mean, we got hit by Helene, but we got clobbered by Milton, and how our town bounced back so quickly is a true testament to your leadership and just the way the whole island was back, you know, the next day. So, you know, kudos to you, and I hope you can help us find a replacement that's as good or better than you. And I wish you well.
Counselor Woodson.
I'm extremely saddened by this. I know what's led up to it. I feel your pain. The negativity that has taken place on this island is uncalled for, absurd, ridiculous. You know, here we have a person with such incredible experience, but such a common sense approach to business and getting things done. I mean, I look at the caliber of talent that we have in our town now, and I totally credit that to you, Andy. I mean, you raised the bar for what we were looking for. You raised the standards through performance management. You raised the standards through our culture. I shake my head because it makes me furious. You know, our relationship with Lee County has never been better. Town manager to city manager, and what you have proven and done. I think we all need to look at ourselves for this decision. And like I said, I'm very sad. I know that you will work with us. I know that you will help us. That's not even consideration. I had hoped we'd grow old together, Andy. But I do understand, and I'm just sorry. And I apologize.
If I may.
Give me just a second,
Sorry.
if you don't mind.
No.
You know, sitting here thinking and listening to you guys talk, do I want to bring things up? Do I not want to bring things up? And I won't bring them up, but I'll just give you a little example. I don't know why exactly, Andy, you chose. I think I have some ideas as to part of the reasons. Family obviously being one of them. When we all signed up for this job, we knew we'd be criticized. No matter what, you're going to be criticized. And we signed up for it. We're okay with it. But when it spews to your family, and we have to have a deputy here because our town manager is afraid, not for his safety, but his family's safety, we've gone too far.
That's right.
Anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
It's tough. It's mostly tough because of the people you see right here. We've grown very attached to each other. Our relationship is as good as I've ever had. You know, I've joked with Jackie Lezak way back. She'd mentioned something, and the comment I had, well, you know, you always leave them wanting more. You know, if you go out high, I'm not one to pat myself on the back. I'm really not, because no one person can do it alone. It takes all of us. It takes the whole village. It takes residents. It takes you. I mean, you sacrificed. These employees, my town staff, all employees sacrifice. They're here to make a living. I get it. I've tried in some small way to improve, the way they look at coming to work. Jeff, if you don't mind, me saying this, that Jeff came to me, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, and just me and him talking, he said, you made it fun coming back to work. You made it fun coming to work. Who says that? You shouldn't have fun at work, right? But if you enjoy your job, it's not like working. And I think that's what you see with the way they drive themselves. I mean, Joe's quiet, but my gosh, what has he done for this town?
Exactly.
Talisa, and what has she done for this town? And Frankie, and I know we all, have our shortcomings, me especially. I'll be the first to admit it.
I don't have shortcomings.
But maybe you don't. You make up for some of ours. But,
Nothing
working
short.
with the attorneys and working with, the town clerk and just trying to set the organization up for success. Some of the things we've done, and I'll kind of segue into, your request. Some of the things we've done, we tried to do it on the cheap. And I'll be totally honest that every time we tried to spend dollars, it's like, okay, well, you have to approve it. We just don't go spend the dollars and then, hope nobody sees what we did. That's completely opposite. Just go back and check everything. I know there's an email out there that's criticizing me to the hilt, and that's okay. Everybody's got their right to say anything they want to say. But get the facts straight. When you say we did this, we did that, we spent this, we spent that, where'd the money come from? We did things without affecting the budget. I would dare say that Joe, and he's told me this, the number we've given you, and it's not been audited yet for FY24, is going to be higher on what we conserve because of our conservative approach to finance, and the way we operate a town is going to be higher than what we had anticipated, like $1 million more. And that's not my words, that's what Joe has talked to me about, just his preliminary. Now, there'll be an audit, so it'll be proved, and it'll come in after I leave. But, it's working to get the funding from the CDBG-DR money. When we first got the information, and I first got here, everybody we talked to, no, you're not getting any. No, you're not getting any. But we got some. Against all the odds, we got money. The gentleman was up talking about, our bond for the new town hall. We don't have a bond. It's paid for.
Paid for.
We got that without spending any of our general fund money or borrowing money. We're about to get $7.6 in revenue replacement. Revenue replacement. And we still saved almost over $3 million from last year. People start doing the math. We're financially, you said it this morning. You just happened to say it, but I heard you. We're in financial, I wasn't even in the room. I was coming in the room. You weren't talking to me. We're in financial better situation than we've been in a while. And I mean, you can go back and look. We've just continued to work
Even before.
as hard as we can, have staff do things that way. To move on, the town hall, in the next 100 days, I did hear, yesterday during all the activities on at the federal level, the first 100 days. Well, I'm in the last 100 days. You're going to see a lot of changes in the last 100 days. You're going to see the town hall finished. You're going to see the parking lot finished. You're going to see this project where we're sitting start to take shape. You're going to see the bid for the pool. You're going to see just one thing after another start to hit. I mean, but it's been a culmination of what they've been doing the last 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 months. 2 years seems that's nothing in the scheme of things. I'll be 66 this summer. We all kind of, except for you, kind of in that age bracket. But we just have, I chose you. At the end of the day, I chose you. You chose me, but I had to choose you too. Scott, you're one of the first people I met outside of the elected body, and we've had a relationship since at a social setting. About the second week I was here. I mean, and it's just things that we've developed over time, and each one of us, and the conversations we have, and You know, and we're gonna work on the North Water Tower and the South Water Tower. We're gonna have projects going there. We're gonna work with the county continually to get paving projects where we continue to put things out to get money. You know, we went back, the mayor asked if we go back and look what we get in the past. Well, you continually, before I got here, since like 2017, I think was the date, continually asked the state for appropriations. It got denied, or it got vetoed, or I haven't had anything vetoed or denied. Not that I'm anybody special, it's not that, but it's about the timing, it's about the ask, it's about, you know, are you shovel ready? Dan and I were sitting there with Senate President Pasadomo in her office. She wasn't there yet. We were there for the meeting. She showed up just specifically to talk to us, and they were talking about if you can find something where you can buy something and move into it, we will support it. I think when I got here, Dan, we all talked about a 24 to plus $1 million project, which could take 5 years or so. And if you think planning something and we go through and they debate, just try to build a building and have 5 of them decide what you're gonna put in the building, what's it gonna look like, how tall it's gonna be, you know, what this room's gonna do, what this carpet's gonna do. They were gracious enough to just let us run with it. And I think you're gonna be proud of what the product's gonna be when we have the product down here. And you come see it. We need to go see it. It's the second and third floors. We could all move in there today and not miss a beat. We could go home on Friday, come back on Monday, and just pick up at Town Hall. But we need the first floor. We need the elevators. Elevators are coming in. They'll start in about 2 weeks. The building's coming down today. Start tomorrow with the demo of the 7-Eleven property. The stormwater projects continue. We bought a VACON truck that came from COVID money that we had to spend or give it back. So each one of you, if I'd have said, we're gonna give $2 million back because I don't think we should spend it. I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It'd been a motion to dismiss the manager because he's not thinking clearly. So we spent the money on the things we could use that I heard every one of you and probably 80% of the citizens say of my emails and complaints. Our stormwater system, we gotta clean out this drain, so we're rectifying that situation by spending that money that we had to spend it. We had cars flooded out with Helene. We had to replace those trucks, we had to replace those, so insurance money. Do you think that we got the same amount of insurance money that the new truck costs? No, because the way costs go up, you had to get creative, but we've been creative. I really believe I am going to leave it better than I found it. And it's not a negative reflection on you. That's not the point. That's what you wanted. You wanted me to come in and improve. You wanted me to come in and do better. You've not given a blank check, but you've given the support and you've given the guidance and direction. And as we talk to each one of you, I mean, we talk every week. We talk, some of us more than others, some of us every day, some of us 3 or 4 times a week. It's just the way that this dynamic has worked. And I believe it has been a very I really believe if people in a couple years come here and look at how we do things here, they're gonna say, let's do it that way. I've already got other town managers calling, how are you dealing with FEMA? How did you do this? How did you recover? How are you doing with your budget? How did you work with less money? How did you do this? You know, we're just trying to help educate other people on what we did. You know, I remember when I was in Surfside and I was watching this hurricane and we sent police officers over here. We sent our own team over here to help and to support you. It's kind of like we developed a relationship without really realizing we were developing a relationship. So I think my proudest achievement, and this is probably gonna sound a little corny, is the staff. I think to a person, I don't have to worry about what they do. I don't have to go and check up and micromanage every minute. I'm kind of a quiet person. I guess that's all falling against the wayside now because I'm talking so much. But it's just, I don't know, it's almost a sense of relief. It's almost a sense of accomplishment. It's almost a sense of, you know, job well done. I mean, nobody has to say that. When I go home and I go to sleep at night, I know what I accomplished that day. I know how I sleep at night. And that is what I've always been proud of. You know, there are comments, you know, you stay here a couple of years, you stay here a couple of years. I get that, but sometimes there's a season and sometimes there's certain things you need to get done and sometimes you have taken something as far as you can take it. And now you need that next person to take it even to a higher level. And I will commit to you, for the 100 days, and then we can discuss after that, as we get closer to that, if you need that, whatever you need to get to that next person, in here, however you want to do that, and we will start those conversations, soon, so we don't waste any time. I think that's what's, important here. The good part, the bad part is there's not a, I'm part of the Florida City County Managers Association, and there's not a lot of jobs open right now. So as you open one up, you're gonna get a lot of people looking. So I think we've got an excellent opportunity to vet several of them. I'll work with Talisa and the attorneys to go through this process, and we'll keep you apprised of that, but we'll start that, process as soon as possible and be meeting with you, with Amy to get the ads and all that, so we can do what we need to do moving forward.
All right. Tough to move on after that.
Okay.
I think you shortchanged yourself a little bit there too, Andy. I mean, too often people like to pick out the negative and not the positive, and I'm glad you asked him to bring that up, Vice Mayor, because there's far more positive than negative, and those that choose to focus on the negative, shame on you.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes.
And I'm not gonna use all the words, 'cause I told you yesterday what a former colleague of mine told me. But I think to a person in this room that I work with, and if people use the word payoff, fraud, somebody's getting rich, somebody that, I know you well enough, and I know myself, and I know the staff. We're too fearful of the system to do something like that. We're too fearful of the consequences to do something like that. So for people to say foolish things like that shows their character.
Well, and I also think it shows that they don't know who any of us are.
Correct.
Not one of us.
And most of them come
And it's
from
just ignorant.
a place of, I'm just gonna stop, because I don't
Yeah.
wanna get into the negative. So I apologize to my staff. They are all sitting here staring at me and stunned. I'm sure I'm gonna have a lot of conversations coming up later today, as well as, with you. But, my wife's watching, and I know she's watching, and I know my son in Paris is watching. He's surprised too. Will, sorry. Wanted you to know.
Yeah.
Wanted you to see it. One of the others working, and my daughter's probably still asleep.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important for the record, and I'll speak for myself, but I'm pretty safe speaking for my colleagues, particularly since your family's watching, since you were up for a contract renewal. I think it's pretty safe to say, at least from my perspective, and I think I speak for my colleagues, just to your family who's watching, there would have been no issues with your extension. We would have been thrilled to have you as long as you wanted to stay. So I think that needed to be said.
And I would like to keep it open to a change of heart.
Duly noted.
Yeah, well, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but a change of heart sometimes has to come from the community too.
Yep.
All right. Or at least how you portray and voice and go about your business. That needs to be a change there. All right, final public comment. Anyone? Mr. McLean?
Good morning, everybody. John McLean for the record, Egert Street. I would like to say that I'm probably my wife and I were probably one of the first people to meet you
The first.
on this island. And the positive impact that you have had on our island, on the town's business, great staff that were here and have stayed and developed under you, and the new ones that have come. You've completely improved the culture. I'm very saddened to hear that you're having to make this decision, while I'm also, I think as everybody else has stated, incredibly supportive of what you need to do for your family. I truly hope that we can have somebody with the quality and integrity that you've brought to this, it's a high bar that we're gonna have to try and reach. And, I just, questions of integrity and stuff that I've been hearing are just, to me, pathetic. Because I know the character of the people around this town, and it is rock solid. Anyways, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you, John.
Anyone else like to speak in public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Town manager items.
Talked about a lot. The one thing I didn't speak about was the street light project. It is moving along. We should anticipate hopefully I don't want to, sometime in February, I'll just put it that way, because you get held to a different standard when you give a date. Sometime in February, we should start seeing some street lights possibly along Estero. That doesn't mean they're gonna be working, just up. We're trying to get them to put one or two up so they can, at least people can see what they're gonna look like. So that project's moving along, rather quickly. We also have, I did notice the fire department has started working on their property right next door, so we're happy to see that for them.
Andy, on
Yes.
this, since you mentioned the streetlight issue, just curious, the county, long ago has claimed responsibility for the crosswalks at Estero
Yes,
Boulevard.
yes.
Do they consider that project complete? Are they waiting for us to do our streetlights first, or are they gonna do it in conjunction with the streetlights? Okay.
They've said in conjunction, everything I've talked to them about, they're like, well, we waited for FEMA money, we can't do it until we get FEMA money, but then I think it's gonna be in conjunction with what's happening. But again, another thing I'll follow up with Dave Horner about.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can help with that a little. So it's essentially two separate contracts. The contract the town has, and then the contract that the county has with the crosswalks. Two separate projects that are working in conjunction with each other to be completed, which two projects, there's different permits, there's FWC, and that's the latest holdup was an FWC permit, which I think has been handled now, what we've been told.
Talking to Christopher Powell with the project on the FPL side, yeah, they were, because of the beach access, or the south side of Estero Boulevard, where most of these light posts are going in on Estero, they ran into a little unforeseen hiccup with FWC, but they've got that all ironed out, permits in hand, they're ready to roll.
Great, thank you.
That's it, sir.
Anything, okay. Town attorney items.
Okay, so first of all, I'm probably gonna have to take a walk around the building, and then I'm gonna sit down with Mr. Hyatt and have a long conversation with him. I wanna echo a lot of the sentiments that everyone has expressed. And also, from our perspective as the town attorney or city attorney where we serve, we work for you, but we work with the town manager and with the administration. And oftentimes that is a huge, huge factor in a decision on whether or not we will actually consider providing services to a community, because that individual in that spot can make or break your city or your town. Not only financial, I mean, you've heard all the accolades about the finances, which I have not heard things of that magnitude in other cities that we represent. So again, I'm probably have to take 2 laps around the building, but just know that he has left this town in a fabulous place. We have a challenging job, but he has made it fun to come to work here, and you've gotten a lot of things done in a very short period of time. A lot because of your town manager and the skill set that he has and his integrity, and I can go on and on, so I'll be taking a 3rd lap around the building. Thanks.
All right. Council member items and report. I'll start with you, Scott. How about
I've got nothing now.
that? Councilor Woodson?
I should keep my mouth shut.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I have nothing to add.
Councilor King?
Ditto.
Well, I did have some things to add, so I'm just gonna bring them up because I said I would bring them up, because a resident had asked about it. Any updates on the Estero Boulevard landscaping that we had been talking about? Obviously, Helene and Milton came, and, other things have had to happen, but any update you can give us on working with the garden club, and is that potentially gonna move forward anytime soon?
Yeah, yes, and hopefully. You know, a couple of things that, you know, Jeff's plate has gotten really full, and some of the things I've assigned him. Tracy Kohler, she's coming back, returns tomorrow, so we're thankful for that. It's one of the projects I'm gonna be putting in front of her. Obviously, it might be a blessing that we waited a little bit because of Helene and Milton, but I think now is the time. We've already replaced some trees in Times Square and along Old San Carlos, and it's made a huge impact, so it doesn't take much to make an impact. So we're ready to start pushing those things forward and see what we can get accomplished.
And then the other thing, the same person, wanted to give credit for seeing the sidewalk sweeper out, and I've actually noticed 5 o'clock in the morning, he's out there. I haven't seen him on the sidewalks yet, but he's been doing a great job of, or she, I guess I haven't looked inside to see that close, but, has been doing a great job of keeping Old San Carlos and stuff, but, they had asked about specifically around the downtown area where they walk, getting the sidewalks, you know, at least the town-owned sides, getting that piece of equipment on the sidewalk, not just the
Okay.
street.
We can do that.
And then we talked about the Bay Oaks already, so we don't need to go into that, but, that's all I have for now. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
I would just like to say something, I guess. You know, music is my life. So in the immortal words sung by Reunion, life is a rock, but the radio rolled me. Gotta turn it up louder, so my DJ told me. Life is a rock, but the radio rolled me. At the end of my rainbow lies a golden oldie. You're gold, Betty. Move to adjourn.
Got a motion by Counselor King,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Safford. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.